The plan focuses on enhancing the company's financial sustainability, particularly by addressing loan balances and the liquidity gap. In line with the government's agenda, the composition of Kenya Power's board will be adjusted to reflect its shareholding. The cabinet also endorsed proposed amendments to the Water Act of 2016, which introduces public-private partnerships in the development of the water sector. This move aligns with the government's plan to invest in water harvesting and storage for domestic use, livestock and irrigation. The objective is to alleviate water challenges caused by climate change through the construction of at least 100 large dams through PPPs, 1,000 medium dams and 3,000 small dams. These changes in the Water Act clarify the roles of waterworks development agencies as bulk water service providers. Now, 10 more bodies were exhumed at Shakahola Forest in Kilifi County, bringing the death toll to 211. Coast Regional Police Commander Rhoda Onyancha says among the bodies recovered were 2 children.
The search and rescue team rescued 3 male adults, unfortunately in critical condition, and they have been taken to Malindi Sub-County Hospital for stabilization. We've had 4 arrests, and they are all male and in custody, assisting the investigation team with investigations. The forensic team has managed to exhume 10 bodies today.
The number of rescued individuals remains at 84 and missing persons at 610. Meanwhile, Pastor Ezekiel Odero has asked the court to allow him to withdraw 50 million shillings from his accounts. Odero, through his lawyer Danson Omari, says the freezing of his accounts has caused financial and logistical hardships to the operations of its church and school.
Tumeomba mambo matatu. Kwanza, akaunti ya kanisa, ambapo katika ile akaunti ya kanisa wanafunzi katika taifa la Kenya zaidi ya 5,000 ambayo pasta anawasomesha hawajaenda shule kwa sababu pesa zile zinatoka kwenye ile akaunti ya kanisa ndio wale wanafunzi waweze kulipiwa. Pili, shule ya kifahari ya Kilifi International School ambapo wazazi ulipa karo ya shilingi 250 kwa mhula mmoja imefungwa.
And Eliud Wekesa, also known as Yesua Tongaren, is a free man after being released from police detention for several days. Bungoma Principal Magistrate Somolando said that the prosecution did not provide sufficient evidence and ordered police not to interfere with his activities. Wekesa was represented by his lawyer George Wajakoya.
Maana nimeshukuru Mungu kwa kila tendo ambalo limekuwa. Nashukuru maafisa ambao nimekaa nao, wabarikiwe pamoja na kisasi chao kutokea manabii ndani. Maana Mungu ni wa ajabu. Hakuna mwenye amenitulumu hapo ndani na sitasingizia, maana naliapa kutenda haki mbele za Mungu. Nimeshukuru pia Francis Koholi, County Commander. Jana amepea Benjamin 4,000, kamwambia alipia kijana huko. Ni jambo la ajabu sana, nikasema Mungu ainuliwe.
Azimio leader Raila Odinga is raising concerns with the Kenya Kwanza government's resolve to pass the proposed 2023 finance bill as it is. Raila says this shows that the government has chosen to ignore the law on public participation.
The top leadership of the Kenya Kwanza regime in parliament and the executive have pronounced themselves on this matter. They have said that the finance bill will pass as it is. They have said not even a comma shall be removed. On Sunday, Honorable William Ruto said the 3% housing levy to be deducted from the basic salaries is mandatory patriotism. It is clear the so-called public participation being invited is a mere charade and a gimmick to give Kenyans false hope before they are hit with a tsunami of taxes beginning July.
Now, 5 petitioners want the court to order government to declare climate change a national disaster. The 5, Julie Atieno Ogola, John Anyara Emukule, Caroline Kanai Mutemi, Denzel Munga Sembele, and Naomi Mpora Nyeriki, argue that the government is doing too little to prevent dangerous climate change from occurring. In Kenya, the petitioners are also seeking an order compelling the government to limit the volume of greenhouse gas emissions in the country. This is Newswire. I'm Dennis Asseto. Good morning.
.5 Spice FM, Kisumu.
The following takes place from 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. every weekday on Spice FM.
Congratulations. You've seen the hand of the Lord.
Thank you very much. I've earned another title today this morning at Spice FM. Mama Justice, I don't mind it.
Joel in Kericho.
Salama sana Heri, habari ya asubuhi.
Salama bwana, mambo namna gani?
Salama kabisa bro.
Mambo ya Inamoi kuliendaje?
Mambo ya Inamoi, vile nilikwambia ndugu yangu, alienda asubuhi na ile gari ya kwanza.
I must have missed it.
So did I.
Even if somebody wants to render you irrelevant, there is still work you can do.
Okay, sawa.
I deserve to keep you accountable. You deserve to give me a report. You don't work for me. No, I don't work for you. You work for me.
Do you like that Freudian slip? Lovely, isn't it? Thank you very much.
The Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation.
Good morning. This Wednesday, and let's see what's happening on these Nairobi streets today. A little bit of traffic is starting to build up on the Thika Superhighway. We're looking at it coming hot and heavy on Jogo Road. It'll take us through into Landis and then out towards Kamkunji in a short while. All right, what else are we looking at? A little bit of building here and there on North Airport Road, going out then towards the Eastern Bypass, and we'll continue for some time. James Gishore is going to look busy today, but for now you can use it to not have any problems getting towards Waiyaki Way and then out towards the Red Hill Link Road if you're looking for an easy escape from what will definitely be traffic later. All right, in the middle of the week, and let's see what it turns out to be. Where are you? Have you started moving about? Let us know what situation on the roads this morning. Spice of MKE on Twitter.
Spice FM, Nyeri. This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latif, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punch.
After 6 o'clock, how are you doing today? My ear is not hearing well. Is that such something like that?
Well, it's the ear that we use for hearing. So if you can't hear well, then you hear. I would say you're here. Your ear is not hearing well.
My ear is refused to hear well.
That's it.
Okay. Good morning, CT.
Good morning.
How are you?
Fine.
Just like that.
Okay. Start again.
Thank you. Good morning, CT.
Good morning, Du.
How are you this morning?
I'm really very well, thank you.
Very good.
How are you doing?
I am fine, thank you.
That is nice to hear. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. The ancestors are also well and they are greeting you. It's Wednesday, the 17th of May. Abby? Did I say it wrong? Is it the 17th of May?
Yes, it is.
Yes, it is. It's Wednesday, May 17th. Welcome to Kenya's biggest conversation. Ndu and CT with you here. So now one man comes back, another man leaves. Do you people have something that's going on that you didn't tell me?
No, it's not what we have going on. It's what's going around, actually. Yes, we are a constant. What keeps disturbing the constants is this thing called a bug.
Yeah.
Which then comes and messes you up completely. Throws you into a complete spin.
It goes and comes and goes at will.
Yes.
All right. He'll be back with us in a couple of days, I'm sure. So we continue with Kenya's biggest conversation. I see a lot of you trotting in here and there. Let me tell you what we'll be discussing today as we get into it. It is Wednesday, and a few conversations that we'll have today about things that are going on. Okay. There's a word here, anthropogenic. The role of anthropogenic climate change in extreme weather climate events. We've been talking about this for some time. Extreme dry weather conditions and then the rain comes and it's heavy rain filling in some spots. We'll be having a conversation around that at 7 o'clock, and climate change scientist Joyce Kimutai joins us at 7. All right, at 8 o'clock, the finance bill. It's still hot and heavy, front and center in Kenya's conversation today. And Achieng Akumu, who's the regional director, Planned Parenthood Global Africa, joins us and talks about the importance of including young people in national budgets. We'll have that conversation at 8 o'clock. And at 9 o'clock, we'll have a punctuation conversation.
The look I'm giving you is a punctuated pause.
And there's a comma.
Yes, so tell me what it is.
The punctuation conversation. No comma, no full stop. None. Sorry, at 8 o'clock. That's at 8 o'clock. Our finance bill conversation is at 9. 8 o'clock. Nandi Senator Samson Cherargei joins us. Remember, he said no comma, no full stop. The finance bill will go as is. So maybe he'll come and
explain to us
why all the punctuation. Okay? 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, and 9 o'clock. Those are the conversations that we will be having today.
Today's a good day.
Today's a good day. I think many things are happening in the country today. Finance bill is still front and center, and so we'll talk about that a little bit and see where the young people are. We'll find out why all the punctuation, and then we'll also talk about what's happening with climate today. All right, let's come back and take a look at what the skies will show us today with the weather. We'll come back and say hello to you and continue.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
The man who looks at a beautiful girl and doesn't talk to her will end up serving lunch at her wedding.
Hiya, City. Do like that.
My father has killed a mouse. Will he fail to kill a man?
Ameua panya.
Small mammal, big mammal.
Mtu atamshinda.
I mean, I don't know. What are they saying? How are we comparison? I mean, you kill a mouse.
What are they saying?
What they're saying is, my father has killed a mouse. Will he fail to kill a man? Name, surprise. Someone's name.
The name surprised you?
No, the name is surprise.
No, what am I saying? I'm from Nigeria, man. I met somebody called I Believe. So
See?
Your name is I Believe? Yes, my name is I Believe. But that's the short form. I said, excuse me? I said, yes, my name is I Believe. So what's the full name? I believe in the goodness of the
The Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation.
Close your eyes. Imagine your unsecured personal loan application has been approved. Imagine all the things you can do and buy. Imagine all the life goals you can achieve. Now stop imagining. Talk to your employer to switch to I&M at Work and get access to Kenya's largest unsecured personal loan of up to 10 million shillings. Call 0719-088-000 today. I&M. Tunakujali.
15 degrees and cloudy conditions in Nairobi, highs of 22 and lows of 14. And at 16, Nakuru is clear, highs of 25 and lows of 15. It's 16 and mostly cloudy in Nyeri, highs of 23 and coming down to lows of 16 and partly cloudy conditions at 15 in Eldoret. We'll see highs of 25 and lows of 14. It's cloudy at 25 in Mombasa, highs of 30 and coming down to lows of 25 today. And Malindi is cloudy at 27 with highs of 30 and lows of 27. Partly cloudy at 20 in Kisumu, highs of 30, and we'll see highs of 27 in Kakamega, where it's cloudy at 16. 19 and cloudy conditions in Kampala, highs of 28, and we'll see highs of 30 in a clear Dar es Salaam at 26. At 10 degrees, it's mostly cloudy in Johannesburg, highs of 19, and we'll see highs of 32 in a cloudy Lagos at 27. At 25, it's cloudy in Kinshasa, highs of 32 and lows of 25, and 26 in a sunny Beijing. Wednesday afternoon will go to highs of 27. It's 8 degrees and cloudy in Paris, highs of 17 and lows of 8, and 10 degrees and cloudy in London, highs of 17. At 21 degrees, New York is cloudy. Tuesday night coming into Wednesday, highs of 27 and lows of 13.
spice.
Okay, so saying good morning to you today. Everybody is tuned in. I can see waking up this morning with us. Asanteni Sana. Good morning. Okay, folks tuning in. EMK says bring Jimmy part 2 on why defaulting is the option. Okay, well, we'll see how I do that. Good morning to you. Matthew Liala says let the government increase the cost of premium petrol to 200 shillings and we stop there. Okay. City, you had seen this petrol going to 200 at some point and said, even 200, even
Unga.
Even Unga can go to 200.
Even 250.
Okay.
What sugar now, Matt?
Sugar is 300 and something like 2 kg. Yeah.
Why don't we just give it 400?
Sounds nice. What? 2 kgs of sugar is 430 shillings. Good grief. Okay. Morning situation room, waiting for the punctuations. Indeed, the punctuations will be punctual at 8 o'clock. Joseph Ondigi says tuned in from Kisii City. Good morning. Kisii is a city.
Yep.
Ednah. Kisii is a city. Gloria Mwende says good morning from Nakuru. We see you this morning. Karibuni Sana. Who else is online with us today? Pato Mugo says greetings with a warm heart and cold feet. Indeed, it is cold. City Muga is feeling it properly. Wa Ebubere Mumias Nikondani and Pango. That's Faristo. Good morning to you. Tune in from the CBD for another session of the most informative and engaging radio show in Kenya. Where? Good morning, Wazito. Okay, now when somebody says Wazito City, it means you're the guy. How?
Mzito is actually heavy. Yes. So I suspect the reference is to heavyweight.
Like, okay, yeah, so the heavy's in the room.
If you're big, you have weight.
Thank you very much, Joseph Njoroge. Tuned in from, you're sitting by the lake in Homa Bay. That's Jefferson. Good morning to you. Andrew Franklin, good morning. It's drizzling in Lavington. Good morning to you, sir. Okay. Jane Duta, good morning, Muga and Ndu. Good morning, Duta. When I first came to Kenya, people used to call me Duta or Nduko. So, now that we're...
Or Nduoko.
Yeah, Nduko, Duta, Nduku. It's just Ndu. Just be happy with Ndu. Today the driver said to me, why is your name alone? Why don't you put it together with the rest? I said, it is what it is, man. Johnson Mayo says good morning, tuned in from Kapsabet in Nandi County. Robert Mbogo says good morning. Simon Viamba, good morning, friends. Do you know what? I stood stranded along the river with my 20 kg of salt all the way from Magarini. Okay. I stood stranded along River Road with my 20 kg of salt all the way from Magarini. Why were you stranded?
Why were you on River Road?
And why did you have 20 kgs of salt? See, we have many questions, man. You want to tell us?
Or someone told him they don't have salt in Nairobi.
So he was bringing, as per, he used to complain when it was not raining that the only thing that they can see in Magarini is salt.
Yes.
So maybe he decided, if I'm coming to Nairobi, I can come and visit you guys. And the thing that I can bring, as we're Africans, we don't come empty-handed.
No, you never do.
So the thing that we can
visiting, you come with salt.
So now you were stranded on River Road. Why didn't you call us? So tell us, Simon, what's going on? Good morning, tuning from Homa Bay, Kendu Bay. Our leaders should know that amongst the lying lizards, one cannot tell which has a stomachache. Kenyans are very angry, bwana. This financial bill. He said it's the financial bill. Okay. Haiwezekani. Wow. All right. Okay, one more. Spice FM. Hi, Ndu and my professor, Mine and Dungo, says good morning. Karibuni Sana, you guys. Thanks for joining us every day. We don't take it for granted. CT Muga. We're in Eritrea, Abi?
We definitely are still in Eritrea.
Today's proverb.
Yes, today's proverb. This one, I found this one completely funny.
Completely?
No, it was hilarious. A liar, as in L-I-A-R, sweats twice as much as an honest man. I don't know where they did their research, but...
how they carried out this research.
But I'm sure they were speaking from experience. It was observed, lived, I'm not certain, but This is what they had to say, that these people who are accustomed to lying, who are accustomed to not telling the truth, they sweat twice as much as an honest man.
That's very true. Could be very true.
Sayings from this country are quite hilarious.
Interesting.
quite hilarious. Wait until you hear tomorrow.
Okay. I've just got to talk to Simon. Thanks. I've just got to talk to Simon. Another Simon is saying there's a problem with your frequency 102.5. That's our Kisumu frequency. What's going on? Can't hear us? Okay, if you can't, get onto YouTube this morning. The live stream is up, YouTube and on Facebook. So try that and let's see. Anybody else with an issue? 102.5, that's our Kisumu frequency. Let's see if we can tinker about with that and get that up and working. Okay, as we get into Kenya's biggest conversation, let's take a look at what is making the headlines today. Take a break and be back. Take a break for traffic in a short while. But for now, okay. On the Standard, Ruto's new spy master. There it was, front and center. Nuruddin Haji, the now soon to be former DPP, will be the director of the National Intelligence Service. He's replacing Philip Kameru, who's retiring after serving 2 terms. He's an insider in Uhuru's coterie of trusted allies who quietly transitioned into Ruto's camp ahead of last year's poll, according to this headline. Okay, on the Standard as well, grave diggers' horror accounts of Shakahola death fields is what they're being called by now. The exhumation team, whose members earn 1,000 shillings per day to retrieve bodies from shallow cult graves, said the job drains them physically, emotionally, and spiritually. It's also on the front page of the Standard, the KEMSA mess. A day after President Ruto sent managers and board members packing, we reveal how the scandal-ridden authority has paid millions of shillings to more than 350 employees who were locked out of office in the Uhuru-era purge 19 months ago. Dun, 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 dun. Ruto shakes up PSs. Ednah is a soothsayer. She said something was a coming, and here it is, and names a replacement for Dr. Josephine Mburu. On the front page of The Nation today, new faces at Health Ministry as Ruto reshuffles 7 PSs. Esther Ngero, Peter Kiplagat Tum, Jonathan Mweke, Ephantus Kimani, Harry Kimtai, Gitonga Mugambi, Mary Muthoni, and Faith Njeri Harrison will tell you where they're coming from and where they're going as we look into that story. KEMSA paid firms 870 million shillings in a rush, so maybe there's a little bit of something there. Again, that story of Haji being nominated to replace Kameru as the new spy master. On the back page of The Nation, 22 billion shillings budget shortfall puts free education plan in doubt. Okay. And the proposed law seeks to tie Treasury hands in spending public funds. That's what we have on the dailies in terms of headlines. Let's take a look at CT. What have you got on the Star?
Well, what do you want me to tell you first? The Star or Business Daily?
Eeny, meeny, miny, more Business Daily.
Eeny, meeny, Business Daily. All right, top right-hand corner. In
steel blue
corner.
Thank you.
Both public and private sector players have joined the fray toward e-transport through various initiatives. This is a story on page 9. I don't understand what he's talking about, but I'm sure when I read it further, I'll be able to understand it. All right. Banks in poor financial health rise to 13 in a year. Central Bank did not name the affected banks. 8 banks post losses, up from 5 in 2021. Meaning in 2021, 5 banks posted losses, but now there are 13. Okay? Right. Now, posting losses and being insolvent are not necessarily the same thing.
No.
Okay? So we'll find out more about that. Then also there is this mentioned remuneration. Civil servants get 17.7 pay increase in the new budget. Okay? Civil servants are set to receive a 17.7 billion salary increment in the new financial year that starts in July 1st after the Treasury allocated the money in the budget in what's said would worsen Kenyans' wage bill crisis.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, we have a wage bill crisis, then you increase money. So now, essentially, what you've done, you've gone and increased the crisis.
City. You've increased the crisis by increasing the wage bill.
Yeah, if we have a problem with wages and we have a problem paying people the money that they're currently getting, and then you suddenly award them more money, are we going to be more able to pay them the money or less able?
Or less able to pay them? I think I'm going to go with less able to pay them, of course.
Yes.
And that's it. Okay. See, just can you go into that story then a little bit more?
All right, I'll simply read it so that it is easy to understand.
Amma, you want to tell us what was on the Star?
I will tell you what's on the Star. Then I will, no, let me just tell you the story anyway.
Okay.
The Star isn't going anywhere.
Very good.
Okay. Civil servants are set to receive 17.7 billion salary increment in the new financial year that starts July 1st after the Treasury allocated the money in the budget in what could worsen Kenya's wage bill crisis. Treasury Principal Secretary Chris Kipto told Parliament that the money had been factored into the 2023-2024 estimates following recommendations of a job evaluation by the Salaries and Remuneration Commission, SRC. We have allocated 17.7 billion for salary increment for civil servants following a job evaluation exercise by the SRC, Mr. Kipto told MPs. I and the Cabinet Secretary, Njuguna Ndungu, met the SRC last week over the job evaluation recommendations. We were in consultations, and once we agreed the decision is officially communicated, we will release the money to various ministries, departments and agencies and governments. Dr. Kipto said the 17.7 billion allocation is an indication of the cost of salary review reported that the CRC had presented to Treasury. So they've done evaluation and said people need to be given more money, and this is what they are going to do.
Where are they going to get it from?
As I said, if you ask me, the story here tells me that the wage crisis within the government is about to get worse. Because if you have a problem paying what you already have and you're unable to even meet the projected collections, and you are allocating more money for people, well, if you already have a crisis, what do you think you're going to have? You'll have more of a crisis.
You'll have more of a crisis.
Yes.
That's for sure.
Yes.
But the thing is that there must be some rationale, because as you're thinking, there must be some rationale behind saying, okay, folks need a little bit more. They've been complaining that they need more money, right? And by the time you're going to come and say, okay, let's increase, one would hope that you're not just picking things out of the sky and saying, okay, then we will increase your salary without thinking where it's going to come from. Or,
well, are you trying to placate the government employees by telling them they're going to get more money?
When they're not.
Or yes, when in reality, you may have more shilling denomination, as in instead of 2 shillings, you now have 3 shillings. But the 3 shillings will probably buy you what the 2 shillings was buying in the first place anyway, if not less. As I see it, the discussion within government ministries should be, how do we produce more so that the shilling can actually get more for whatever it seeks to purchase? Okay? Because if you have a lot of money and what it's chasing, it's pursuing, it's really the simple laws of supply and demand, doesn't seem to increase at the same rate, then the price of whatever it is you want to buy will continue going up.
Indeed it will.
So it becomes a vicious cycle.
Okay.
And yet, again, with the government borrowing as we see it, this domestic borrowing, and the way we look at the financial situation we're in, there will be a serious restriction, if not constriction, of the flow of money within the economy. Now, in the absence of the flow of money within the economy, there'll be an absence of growth within the economy. So, what exactly are they telling us they're doing? It looks like you want to placate workers by telling them, okay, we'll give you more money,
knowing very well that you are unable, not even that you will not, you don't have the bandwidth to be able to do that.
You don't.
It's one of the stories making headlines. We're going to come back, take a look at traffic for now, and then come back and continue with the stories that are making headlines today. Kenya's biggest conversation continues. Good morning.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
Spice and everything nice. All right, okay.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
Around to 6:30, we are looking at traffic. It's already started to build up quite some on Jogoo Road this morning. On the Thika Superhighway, traffic coming into the CBD is also building up and likely to get crazier as we get closer to 7. Traffic hour looks like it's going to be quite something this morning. Coming off Mombasa Road, as you're coming through towards that Southern Bypass Junction, you're going to slow down a little bit because there's some construction that continues for day 3 now, and it's slowing folks down as you're trying to get out into the CBD, so just watch out for that. By the time you're there really is no option, so you're just going to have to sit tight and wait for that to pass. All right, we're also looking at traffic getting into the CBD coming out of Westlands. Slowly but surely it'll take us out there without too much of a headache, at least for now. And on the North Airport Road heading out towards Outer Ring and then through towards the Eastern Bypass, some traffic there. It's a typical Wednesday morning, smack dab in the middle of the week. Let's see what it holds. Talk to us on Spice FM KE on Twitter as we keep things moving this morning.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM.
8 minutes to 7 o'clock. Karibu Sana. So, Ndu and CT with you this morning. Eric is not sick. For those of you who are wondering, he's all right. A couple of days off is what he's doing, so it's okay. He's fine. Okay, so when we were thinking that this KEMSA issue is no money was touched and it was all in the procurement and it was just about the agreement, no sooner than had you thought that than 870 million now just showed up from somewhere. KEMSA firms paid 870 million in a rush. No, not that they paid, they were paid. And so the question is, how did this happen? And there's some interesting one. James Juguna Courier owns a company called LA Miguela Holdings. He was paid between July and September 2022. How much? 90 million. 498.7 million. James Kipketer Chelule, the owner of Shop and Buy, was paid this amount between July and September 2022. Mishra Pavali, Medilife Biologicals Limited owner, he was paid 110 million in July 2022. And Irene Chemutai Rop, who is the owner of Pasaibai Tourmaline, was paid 4.5 million in October 2022. Why and for what, you might ask? Okay, days to the general election. In August, amid slow business for anyone who was not in the business of campaigns, it was raining money for a handful of contractors hired by KEMSA to import personal protective equipment at the peak of the COVID-19 pandemic 2 years earlier. Now, remember, this most recent one was focusing on the issue of Global Fund and the procurement, or rather the tender given to one company or to be given for the procurement of mosquito nets. Yes? But now we are seeing that there was more that had happened even before that. KEMSA had paid 4 companies 500 million shillings in a series of payments whose controversy could once again invite anti-graft detectives to a government institution that has been plagued by procurement scandals over the years. Okay, so you ask, how and why were these guys hurriedly paid? They were paid days to the polls, so some folks are wondering why did that happen at that time. On July 8th and 27th, KEMSA paid one company 332 million, paid another company 110 million, and paid yet another company 60 million. Internal documents seen show that KEMSA paid 6 companies that supplied COVID-19 protective gear 869 million shillings in the 5 months leading to the 2022 general election. The payments were despite an active investigation by the EAC into KEMSA's procurement of protective gear in 2020 when the COVID-19 pandemic had brought Kenya to a standstill. do you see, CT, do you remember the conversation we were having yesterday? And Eric was asking, why would you do something when there had already been an investigation? Had there not been an investigation about COVID billionaires before August 2022? Had there? Yes. Here again, you're paying these folks almost $1 billion shillings, and there's a question mark around why are they being paid? What procurement were they doing? There was still an investigation going on, and you're still paying them. And you wonder, why would people make the mistake of going into anything that may be riddled with impunity? Well, there you have it. There's another reason or explanation as to how. Do you think there's an active investigation going on, and there's still money of these amounts being paid out? The Director of Public Prosecutions, outgoing, Nuruddin Haji, confirmed yesterday that the investigation is about to be concluded. It's still an active investigation. February 23rd, the file was returned to the EACC for completion of a few aspects before the suspects are charged.
You know, it's a long history though. What we're seeing is what is currently in the news, and because we're in the information age, there is so much that's happening at any given time that sometimes you can actually get confused with the information. But matters pertaining to Global Fund didn't start yesterday.
No.
In 2003, that's when we publicly knew of a problem that had arisen, because Global Fund delayed sending $37 million following claims of corruption at the NACC, National AIDS Control Council. By the way, these problems saw the then director of NACC go to jail. Just so that you understand.
Yeah.
Yes, they started off as this problem, but somebody ended up going to jail. In 2008, the fund rejected Kenya's application for $300 million. It cited corruption, poor absorption of funds, and the sale of inappropriate malaria drugs. In 2009, the fund reviewed panel recommended rejection of $270 million funding request by Kenya. In 2010, the fund announced it was investigating Kenya for stealing money meant to buy ARVs, malaria, and TB drugs. In 2018, the fund investigations found $63 million was stolen through cash advances for bogus activities organized by Kenyan National TB Program. About 120 people attended fake conferences organized by National TB and Lung Disease Program, received per diems and or transport allowances. In 2022, that was last year, 40 million shillings was stolen at the National AIDS and STI Control Program. Fund insists stolen cash must be refunded. The government of Kenya refund us our money.
Same global fund.
Same global fund, meaning the Ministry of Health and its affiliates seem to have been not only pinpointed, but have been at the heart of issues surrounding global fund money. Global fund sends money, individuals within the Ministry of Health, institutions that fall under the Ministry of Health, individuals who work in these institutions known to have played around with the money which was intended either for TB or malaria or HIV. Somehow it found its way into people's pockets.
So when they come and talk about a proposed procurement for mosquito nets then in 2023, and then they start to see certain red flags, if that is the case, do you then do the pieces now start to come together?
Yes.
Whereby they say, wait, hold up.
We've been through this.
We've seen something like this before.
Many times.
We are not going to do it again. So shut the tap. We're not going to do it again. So it didn't just come out of the air. Nobody just decided to wake up one morning and say, oh, you know what, KEMSA, mosquito nets. No, we don't feel like doing that anymore. No. It goes deeper than that, obviously.
No, it is a problem that is not only in the Ministry of Health. It is a problem that even partners who have worked in the field of care and treatment of HIV and AIDS have actually experienced. There are partners who are asked by PEPFAR to refund money. Refund. You are given $8 million, refund.
Refund it.
Yes. Because you have been fiddling with it and doing exactly what we didn't ask you to do. So, that Global Fund has put their foot down. Remember, Global Fund puts their foot down, PEPFAR will put their foot down. Okay? PEPFAR puts their foot down, and guess where PEPFAR comes from?
On America.
Exactly. You'll be told, excuse me, this one. Sorry. we are not going to do this and this. And remember, when you talk about support that the Ministry of Health receives, here we're talking malaria, we're talking TB,
HIV.
We're talking HIV. Now, there are other areas that are also supported. What do you think the support in these areas, or the people who support them, what do you think they're going to think?
And this is it. Malaria still is the number one killer. It's still the number one killer in terms of these diseases.
Yes, it is.
Right now.
It is.
These were mosquito nets that were going to help millions of people. And look, you can call it whatever you want. You can have the taint of, Western help and etc. etc. Why do okay? People were going to be helped with these nets.
In fact, you want to ask the basic question.
And
do
there's
people
now
need the nets? Yes.
Yes. Do people
is malaria killing people? Yes.
It is.
Exactly. So
are the nets going to come now as a result of this? At least in this time that we're talking about? No.
The Star has that story, and their approach to it is even more interesting. In fact, one could argue it's dramatic.
Tell me.
A well-known politician may have been behind the bungled mosquito net tender at KEMSA.
Okay.
Does this not sound dramatic?
Well, it does. Dramatize it for us a little bit.
All right. President William Ruto sacked Public Health Principal Secretary Josephine Buru, the entire board of KEMSA, and suspended the Chief Executive Officer Terry Ramadhani over 3.7 billion botched tender. The tender was for the supply of treated mosquito nets to prevent malaria among millions of low-income households. The leading politician, according to multiple sources, hatched a plot to grab the tender for a few months after Kenya Kwanza took power. And the story goes on how the KEMSA board, through the CEO refused to play ball and said, no, this isn't going to happen. They went to the CA. The CA said, no, go back to the this is a KEMSA issue, let them deal with it. And then the matter was even spoken of by the CS in public, saying, no. Any officer who's caught in graft is going to face the music. The president, again, in televised communication, stated the same thing. You see, this points to the worst of our attributes as Kenyans. The very thing that is given to help those who need it most. Some people feel this is a soft touch that you can just plunder. Honestly, these aren't people whom you take to court for jail terms. You do something else. And the something else, I have on occasion been known to say that progressive country like China shoot such people.
Yeah, I was going to say, is there a Jerry Rawlings moment coming in?
No, I am not going in that direction. Just take whatever points to the monies that they have amassed that was not earned. Take the money and take all of it, and take any property just take it. It is a far, far better punishment. Take it. But these people, don't they see?
No.
When you get caught, it's not you. Likelihood is you have a relative. You have you have children. You are going to scar people for life as a result of this. Or you think it's forgotten. They'll never forget it. No. Your name is in the paper. Your picture is in the paper.
Everywhere.
The story goes on. It never goes anywhere.
People suffered as a result of your action.
They will. And what for? Because you decided to do the very thing you are not employed to do. Right.
And as we have all of this conversation, there is a shuffle then that happened with 7 PSs. Esther Ngero now has been moved from performance management to correctional services. Peter Kiplagat Tum has been moved from medical services to sports. Jonathan Mweke from sports to livestock. Ephantus Kimani from forestry to irrigation. Harry Kimtai has been moved from livestock to medical services. Gitonga Mugambi has been moved from irrigation to forestry. Mary Mudhoni has been moved from correctional services to public health. And nominated PS Faith Jerry Harrison, if that name rings a bell, has been taken to performance management. So the new faces at the health ministry as Ruto shuffles 7 PSs. These are happening in succession. A lot is happening at the same time. And you want to ask yourself, what is the movement? We can see the movement of PSs, but what is the movement behind all of this? And what does it mean? What does it portend? Is there going to be yet another one? President William Ruto yesterday evening talked about what he's calling functional changes for better implementation of government programs. It's barely a year since they were appointed to offices. It's barely 8 months. Earlier this week, the firing bait caught up with Josephine Mburu, who was the principal secretary in charge of public health at the ministry. She became the first PS in the Kenya Kwanza government to be sent home. Her firing came days after a 4 billion mosquito net scandal at KEMSA. Her colleague, Principal Secretary at the Health Ministry, Engineer Peter Tum, who had KEMSA as one of the institutions under his docket, was spared the sack and has been transferred to the Ministry of Youth Affairs, Arts and Sports. So we see these movements back and forth. The changes come after a cabinet meeting yesterday when the president emphasized the need for integrity and vigilance within government ministries and departments. According to a dispatch from Cabinet, he issued a stern warning against corruption and wastage in the provision of services to the people. He asked for the Cabinet to honour their responsibility to the Constitution and the people. He said corruption and wastage of resources will not be tolerated. There's a warning that comes from the president I was talking about, saying, look, I'm not going to take it. I'm not going to stand for it. And if you ask me, folks who may have been sitting pretty in their positions, this thing, it will go to CSs as well. PSs, doesn't matter, it will go.
It will.
If you had sat pretty thinking that, all right, things are going to be as they have been, President has fired a warning signal and said it's not going to be business as usual. If there has been plundering, if there has been corruption, if there has been impunity, call President William Ruto whatever you like. But it seems as though he's telling folks, this one, we're not going to stand for it. Don't taint my image, number one. Number two, do the job that I've put you to do. Number three, don't make us look bad to the people that we're going to try and shake their hands with to help us developmentally. Don't do it. Otherwise, you'll do what? You'll go home. That's exactly what he's doing.
You know, I'd be a lot happier if instead of people going home, the moment someone was mentioned, they would step aside.
In where?
In our government. If something happens in your docket, and it's something untoward, step aside. You know, in 1995, there was the period before it, the then President Moi set up a commission. The commission was to look into devil worshipping. Devil worshipping.
Okay.
Yeah. And no less a prelate than the Archbishop of Nyeri at that particular time was in charge of this particular commission now. They said many things. It wasn't made public, but the then Minister for Interior, a gentleman by the name of Sonkuli, tabled this matter in Parliament in 1999. Okay? One of the wonderful things about the findings of this commission, they more or less set the pillars along which Chapter 6 was actually based. Because among the findings, they said, look, we need to have people conduct themselves in a certain way. We need to have a body of security people who are trained specifically for this particular sort of work, so that they know exactly what happens and how it happens. If we do not strengthen and bolster Chapter 6, so that civil servants, people who are in the public eye, know that certain things will not be tolerated, and that they will pay a price even if a whiff of impropriety sort of like crosses their eyebrows. Unless we get to that stage, what we are now seeing will be mere window dressing. But people in public office need to know that the mention of impropriety in their docket will have consequences. The mention.
Yep.
The mention. So they will go out of their way to ensure that that mention doesn't even occur. And if the mention doesn't occur, then it means the deed itself will not occur.
Will not occur.
Yes.
And so here we are with an example of this project, which many would argue, for all intents and purposes, actually didn't take off. Okay? It was stopped in its tracks before anything was actually done. And we're already seeing signs that something could go wrong. And this is why I like this action. Anybody can say, well, did they really do anything? Did they not? If it's a warning signal to anybody who wants to continue in this manner, like I said, call the president whatever you like. But if there's anything that he sent out, especially from this cabinet dispatch yesterday, there is a look, you know what, guys, we're not going to do it like this anymore. These billions that we are seeing being wasted. My hope would also be that even as that is going on, other places where we see this pillage and wastage happening at government level will actually come to an end. The people that you're talking about who went on business trips that actually did not go and things like that, Why do we still see such stories why do we see such things still happening? Why are such stories still being reported? Because they're going on. And we're talking about money in the billions. While that is happening, there's a 22 billion shilling shortfall that puts free education at risk. The things that actually should be happening are not happening, and our children might actually be threatened school-wise. 22 billion shillings budget shortfall is on the back page of The Nation today, and it's threatening the successful implementation of the free day secondary education, which you remember was supposed to cater for 1 million learners, and it might leave them without funding in the next financial year. The shortfall comes despite a 964 million shilling increase in the capitation grant for the program, which funds all learners in public secondary schools. Appearing before the National Assembly's Education Committee yesterday, Principal Secretary for Basic Education, Dr. Belio Kipsang, said the current enrollment of 3,938,109 learners at the rate of 22,244 shillings per learner in secondary school gives a total requirement of 87.6 billion shillings. However, the proposed allocation in the 2023-2024 budget for free day secondary school is 65 billion. It leaves 998,620 learners outside the program. We need an additional 22.21 billion to fully cover these learners, even though we say we are funding at 22,244 per learner. We are not telling the full story, Kipsang said. His revelation comes at a time when secondary school principals have been complaining about delayed payment of capitation grants, which they say has made running schools difficult. It was difficult then, it's difficult now. The State Department of Basic Education has been allocating 135 billion shillings, comprising 15 for recurrent expenditure and 19 for development. The total allocation represents a net increase of 5 billion from 130 billion. Kipsang told MPs that the budget for the free primary education has been maintained even with 7 classes in primary school, which will be further reduced to 6 next year as the introduction of junior secondary school takes root. So there's a problem here. You want to educate children, you don't have enough money. And he said that it's going to be free for everybody, even with the capitation. But if that money doesn't come, it's going to be difficult to send these kids to school. Meanwhile, there was 870 million that was paid to people that we don't know if the money should have been paid to them. I mean, many would say you can't say that 870 can be moved here. But I'm saying, does it mirror a full picture of attention to priority?
You know, it's interesting you should ask that question because remember in the paper not too long ago, I'm talking about 2 weeks or so, JICA had complained and had put a halt to some of the work that they were doing in the economic free zone and the building of a particular bridge. You know, this story goes back to the Kenyatta era, the Uhuru era, where what was at play here was the understanding that JICA were going to do certain things and the government would do others. The other things the government was to do was to pay people who was to be compensated when their land was taken to be used for the building of the bridge. Now, just around the time before the election, JICA then said, you know, it is important for us to see that these people are paid off before we start everything else. Some of that money which had been set aside to pay people disappeared. So people are not compensated. Now, if people are not compensated, how then do you move them? Now, organizations like JICA are strictlers. If certain things are agreed upon and they're not done, then nothing will move. I place this particular discussion alongside the technical university that the Federal Republic of Germany had agreed to build for us. Again, this nonsense that we see among our politicians doing the thing that they do best, ensuring that the citizen doesn't benefit from anything that they could, the German government pulled away. So, these actions that the elected leaders and those who employ in the civil service to serve us do, they harm us.
They don't help.
Yes, the things they do cause us more harm than good. And this constant excuse that we should look for the good they do, which good? That's what they're paid to do.
If you have to look for the good that somebody is doing to do their
you're
job,
paid to do your job. Why are you insisting that we must look for the good? If we are asking to look for the exceptional, I will look. But where is it? Every time you look, what you see is doom and gloom, something that has gone wrong, which didn't need to go wrong, because a few individuals decided that they were going to be cleverer than everybody else, and they would have misappropriated the money that was intended for this public good. Now, it is not possible for us to have a government that claims it is out to help the citizens, and we have people who have been responsible for these things walking scot-free. Because we didn't import people from some other country to come and do these things. It's individuals within the country. And these things have been documented, and we know what went wrong. We know who did them. We need to go back into history, and I'm not talking about 100 years ago. I'm talking about 2-3 years just down the line. Individuals who have been involved in matters that touch on the public good, these people should be brought to book.
Is there an appetite for dealing with corruption as much as there is an appetite for corruption itself?
There's an appetite for excusing corruption. There's an appetite for excusing impunity. There's an appetite for finding reason to explain away why somebody has stolen monies that are intended for public good. There's always a reason. And there's always a support for it. There's always logic being provided. You're being told these heavy taxes that you're being asked to pay, and which are in this particular bill, are good for you, good for me. Okay. It'll help business grow. It'll help when anyone who understands the most fundamental rules of economics will tell you it will kill growth. Simple. And if it kills growth, it means you will have less to collect.
Even as we're hoping that some of this corruption is actually dealt with, DPP, now outgoing Nuruddin Haji, has dropped a number of cases over the last few months, and folks who may have been asked to answer because there was sufficient evidence to charge them, all of that now closed, done and dusted. The same man now goes to the helm of the National Intelligence Service. He's been tapped by President Ruto to take up that position with the retirement of Major General Philip Kameru, who's been at the helm since 2014. He is the next director of the National Intelligence Service, having been nominated by the president. As it goes to Parliament, that will go through. From what we see, it comes ahead of the retirement of Major General Philip Kameru. In communication by the head of public service, Felix Koskei, yesterday, Ruto said the nomination of Mr. Haji is meant to facilitate smooth transition at the NIS. It is notified that His Excellency the President has, in accordance with Section 7 of the National Intelligence Service Act, nominated Mr. Nuruddin Haji for appointment as the Director General of the National Intelligence Service. His name has been transferred to the National Assembly for consideration once MPs resume from recess next month. Before becoming Kenya's top prosecutor, Haji served as the Deputy Director at the Counter-Organised Crime Unit within the NIS. The University of Wales alumnus joined the public service in January 2000 as a state counsel in the office of the Attorney General, and he will now be the top spy boss in the country. Many questions circulating, a lot of the cases that were dropped in the last few months by DPP, some even concluded as late as yesterday, dropped for lack of evidence that has been.
You would then want to ask the question, were these real cases to begin with?
What fiduciary responsibility then lies with making sure that you actually present proper cases from the beginning?
It then places a huge question mark on almost any case or any major case that is brought.
Even today?
Yes. Anytime it comes up, then we have every right to question and say, okay.
Absolutely.
Are we certain that this case it actually merits going to court? Are we certain that there's evidence to support this case as it goes forward?
Nobody today who is before the docks does not have a right to ask that question. And
what they've done they've created a precedent.
They have.
And this precedent is going to come to bite us.
It's coming around to 7 o'clock. Kenya's biggest conversation continues. Where are you? We get into the conversations after the news. It's 7 o'clock.
Spice up your life.
Dennis Aseto. As the government continues to put its house in order, President William Ruto has reassigned 7 principal secretaries in a reshuffle following the sacking of Public Health Principal Secretary Josephine Mburu. Correctional Services Principal Secretary Mary Muthoni has been named the new PS responsible for public health docket, yielding a portfolio to Ednah Nyeri, who ceded the performance management docket in the Prime Cabinet Secretary's office. Ruto moved Medical Services PS Peter Tum to Sports. Livestock PS Harry Kimtai took Tum's slot at Afya House, relinquishing the docket he held to Jonathan Mweke, who served as Sports PS. Forestry PS Fantas Kimani swapped slots with Irrigation's Gitonga Mugambi. Ruto fired Mburu Monday over graft allegations on the donor-funded National Malaria Program. The head of state has since read the Riot Act against CCSs over corruption, saying that no one will be spared. And Azimio leader Raila Odinga has raised concerns with the Kenya Kwanza government's resolve to pass the proposed 2023 finance bill as it is. Raila says the increase of fuel prices is a clear indication that President William Ruto doesn't care about the common wananchi.
The rise in the price of fuel and the continuing fall of the shilling means the cost of everything goes up again. Kenyans will recall that earlier on we had warned that despite all state propaganda trying to ease the supply shortage of maize and lower its costs through duty-free imports would not work and that prices would not come down. Such negotiations have failed as was expected. Reports indicate that not many importers took the offer. The net effect is that the price of unga has not come down. Instead, they are set to rise again.
Raila has also warned opposition MPs against supporting the bill as it stands.
This bill remains a big no and no. There's unanimity over its rejection. It's our position that this bill does not qualify as a just tax system. Yes, the country is ripe for tax reform, but this is not one of them. This proposal does not lead to distribution of income. It does not combat poverty. Instead, it seeks to manufacture and distribute poverty. This proposal does not spur economic growth nor generate wealth so that every family in this country can have opportunities.
And the State Department for Correctional Services has initiated a plan to decongest prisons across the country. Principal Secretary in the department, Mary Muthoni, said that they're working with the judiciary so that inmates with minor offences can be released. Muthoni also said that offenders who had children below 2 years would also be considered in the decongestion plan.
We are working very hard together with the judiciary to see that we are reducing the numbers in our prison facilities. Children in prison, first and foremost, we are fast-tracking, the judiciary is fast-tracking the cases of women who are petty offenders to ensure that the children who are very young, the children who are in prison are below 2 years. Therefore, if we can get them out of prison, the very best.
And Chief Justice Martha Koome has promised to deploy alternatives to pre-trial detention such as diversion, alternative justice systems and plea bargaining to address challenges posed by incarceration pending trial. Speaking during the start of the African Regional Colloquium on enhancing the delivery of justice by addressing pre-trial detention challenges, Koome said the principle of innocent until proven guilty remains sacrosanct in the pursuit of justice. Koome added that Kenya is also promoting non-custodial sentences like probation and community service in deserving cases. And 25 ministers from different countries across Africa are among high-profile dignitaries who are expected to attend this year's Madaraka Day celebrations. 5 CSs visited the venue to inspect the progress of the preparations with less than 2 weeks to go. PS Interior Raymond Omolo has announced that there will be 1-week exhibition that will be opened by the President on May 25th.
The county will host an expo beginning on the 26th, which will be opened and presided over by His Excellency the President, the Honorable William Ruto. Alongside that, there will be an international expo at Safari Park in Nairobi on the 29th, where we have a total of 25 ministers from the continent attending. And the same ministers would also grace the Madaraka Day celebrations on the 1st in Embu County.
I'm Dennis Aseto. Good morning.
Traffic on Vibes Radio.
Welcome. Spice FM, Nakuru.
All right, a few minutes after 7 o'clock, and we're looking at it having built up in certain parts of the Thika Superhighway coming into the CBD. That's looking pretty heavy as you get out towards the Pangani Underpass. Is always going to be like that madness. And then past the Pangani Underpass through to Muranga Road, and then getting into the CBD proper. On Kiambu Road, in and outbound traffic really is inbound traffic because the lanes, always get to crazy status. Jogo Road was busy from morning, still continues to be so as you get onto Landis, coming from that City East Stadium roundabout, and they're also going to go off onto Lusaka Road with some traffic as well. All right, Langata Road looks pretty good for now. It's going to come off of the greater Langata Road coming in from that junction at Bomas. And then on Gong Road, traffic has started to build up as well. We're going to see some of that seep onto from Gitanga Road and then onto James Gishuru. That's already looking pretty busy at the Drift. Wednesday morning looks like it's going to be a packed one. Are you on Mombasa Road this morning? You'll see some traffic as you're getting towards that southern bypass exit, and that's because of that construction that's taking place. They're going to round up that for today at some point this morning so that traffic can continue flowing. But if you're stuck up at GM outbound and you're wondering what's going on, it's that construction. All right, it'll be cleared up soon enough. Let's know what's going on in your neck of the woods this morning. Talk to us on Twitter, Spice FM KE.
This is the Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latif, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
8 minutes after 7 o'clock on Kenya's Biggest Conversation, and thank you for joining us this morning. The conversation continues at this hour on our live streams on YouTube and Facebook. Karibuni sana. Welcome to our audience on KTN Home. Thank you for joining us this Wednesday. Our 7 o'clock conversation now takes shape if you're just joining us, and we're going to be having a climate conversation and some of the things that are happening with our environment this morning. Our guest is in the studio this hour. Joyce Kimutai is with us, and we're going to say hello to her in a minute. But before we do that, let's hear CT, today's proverb.
Yes, our proverbs for the whole of this week are from the country of Eritrea. Now, most people understand the history of Eritrea from the time when they parted ways with Ethiopia. But Eritrea as an independent and a unique state started well before then. But that's a story for another day.
Okay.
All right. The proverb. A liar sweats twice as much as an honest man.
It is true. Don't ask me which one I know.
Yes, you seem you seem to find this proverb funny. I found it funny as well. Tell us why you're finding it funny.
Because it's true. I think it's true.
It's true.
Yeah.
Joyce Kimutai, I'm going to welcome you this morning to Kenya's Biggest Conversation. You're in the hot seat this morning. Good morning and karibu to you with that proverb. I'm going to ask you what you make of it before I tell you something about tea.
Okay, I think there's a lot of truth in that proverb, and especially the bit that says that when you're lying, you tend to sweat more than you're saying the truth. Because I think when you're lying, you think everyone knows that you're lying. And so that's why the sweat trickles more.
You're uncomfortable.
And yeah, you're more uncomfortable. And it's not like people know that you're uncomfortable. It's just you. It's in your mind. So you're sweating more. And like when you're saying the truth, you're like, I have nothing to hide. Yeah.
So you don't have to think about it.
You don't have to think about it.
Okay. I have the tea for you, the literal tea. The literal tea. And these guys are making some fantastic stuff. Even as we welcome you to, we talk about environment and things like that. I'm going to tell you about Kiptagich tea. It's on the plains as you're going out towards Bomet. They are producing premium stuff.
Yeah.
And they're producing it in different flavors. And they have varieties that they don't have to send the tea outside of the country, make it into those varieties and sell it back to us. They're doing it all here.
Yeah.
Tangawizi, lemon, ginger, purple tea, hibiscus. So I've been having this thing in my throat yesterday. I combined the lemon and the ginger, put it in a cup, and it did some magic to me. I tell you, it's good. Premium tea. And then for the first time in a long time, I actually tasted the tea. And you can taste the tea. They're doing some great stuff with it. And you can see it here. New flavors, variety packs, something you ought to try. Tea made in Kenya, sold in Kenya. Fantastic.
I'm definitely going to try that.
You see? And it is at that point that we welcome you to Kenya's biggest conversation today properly. Joyce Kimutai is a climate scientist at the Kenya Meteorological Services. And we're talking today, there's a word here that does the tumble on me every time. The role of anthropogenic climate change in extreme weather climate conditions. It started raining after years of it being very dry, because we're talking about years in parts of the country. So Joyce, as we get into this conversation today, let's start with some definitions of what is what. You're saying there's the role that anthropogenic climate change plays in the climate situation. Let's start with what is that in the first place? What is anthropogenic climate change?
Thank you so much, and that is a really fantastic question. And I like speaking a lot about like really explaining what that means, because I think it's really fundamental for people to understand what we mean by anthropogenic climate change. So before, at the moment, our climate has warmed by over 1 degree compared to 1850. Why am I saying this? 1850 is the time where we had not started to heavily industrialize. So there've been changes in the climate system, and there've been variability in the climate system. We've had floods, we've had droughts, we've had any type of extreme events happening. But it's important to say that when human activities became a bit intensified, there was a lot of emissions of gases that we call greenhouse gases into the atmosphere. And what those gases do is they create sort of a blanket in the atmosphere. So they trap heat. So there's the heat that comes from the sun, which we call the shortwave radiation, but then it has to reflect back into the sky. But then because these gases are present and they're creating sort of like an umbrella, which we call it like a greenhouse effect, they warm. So that warming is what has happened, and the result of that warming is the changes in the patterns of weather.
Okay.
So it's like an athlete on like sort of steroid or something. Like you are the system would perform normally, but then now there's like an added effect of the warming.
I think for the first time I've heard that greenhouse effect explained to me just now properly. So we're saying the gases have created a cover over the atmosphere, right, over the earth, and what would ordinarily be all right for plants in a greenhouse is not all right for the earth in general.
Exactly. So we have. So there should be a balance in the system, and there's always a balance. But when you emit so much in a way that it cannot be synced, and I'll explain what syncing means. But that is the taking out. So there's the natural things, like our forests take a lot of CO2. carbon dioxide, our ocean take a lot of that. So there's normally that balance. So of course we can industrialize, we can emit, but then there should be the balance between what goes into the atmosphere and what sinks back. But then now we've heavily industrialized in a way that there's sort of a net positive, like there's too much. So that blanket has been created in a way that it has now warmed the globe. And so that warming of the globe has altered everything else that happens in there. So for example, you're trapped in this room. So instead of you breathing normally, they introduce a gas that keeps warming this room. So if there's nothing that takes out the gas from this room, with time, you get yourself being overwhelmed or something. I don't know if that's such a word exists, but then you're starting to get hot and hotter with time. And that is what is happening exactly to our planet.
Okay.
At the heart...
Go ahead, CT.
May I?
Yes.
At the heart of this discussion seems to be a gas we refer to as CO2. Okay, now, I'm going back to primary school when I was first taught about these things. And I was told that the interesting balance between human beings and nature, okay, is that what we produce is what now nature uses to grow, and vice versa. So it means the trees and the foliage that we see helps absorb the CO2. Okay. Now, every time I hear the discussion about climate change, I go back to my primary school and ask myself, are we saying that what's being produced as a factor of industrialization, that these gases are overwhelming nature so that the natural processes where all these gases could be utilized and would be part of this cyclical matter that we call life, are we saying that too much of these gases are being produced so that now we've actually destabilized that balance that is supposed to exist in nature?
That is exactly the point. That is exactly how it is. Since the beginning of time, there's been this balance, the way you're saying, that our plants use CO2 to photosynthesize. It's a normal process. So there's the taking of the CO2. So there's been a balance in our system, and it's already been a natural sort of a balance. Also, the oceans taking our CO2. Yeah. Yes. So there's been the balance. But the problem with the situation now is we are overwhelming the system. So we are creating imbalance in the system. And that imbalance in the system is what is causing the warming. So CO2 is like, where am I supposed to go? And the problem with it is that's the blanket thing that it creates. So it traps the heat. And when it traps the heat, then the temperatures rise.
Okay.
Yeah.
Who is we?
It is humans. It's us. So when we say anthropogenic, we say human-induced. So it's human-induced. It's the influence of humans in the system. If, for example, humans were not interfering with the system in a way that we've interfered now, and it's a result of us trying to industrialize, do more, it's a good thing. We've advanced where we are because of these technological advancements. The revolutions, we are now going to the fourth industrial revolution. So the 1, 2, 3 has really made us be where we are.
Okay.
So we've overwhelmingly emitted so much into our planet, into our atmosphere, in a way that we're warming it now. And we're seeing all these impacts happening to us.
When we say we, humans, we're still talking about a collective engagement of humans across the globe who are doing this. So then are we saying at the same time that even those who are struggling to industrialize today, the BRICS, looking at this part of the global south, who are struggling to industrialize, because the industrialization that we talk about in the global south, for example, is nowhere in comparison to the industrialization that has taken place in the north and the west, and what continues to take place. I read an article just yesterday that says, even if the global south were to continue in its quest for industrialization for the next 10 years at the level at which the north did over the last 20, we would be nowhere in terms of reaching. So my question is, who are we talking about here?
So we are talking about. So it was when I said we, it was very intentional actually, and it's because we have a responsibility as humanity in totality to deal with climate change, but then we won't forget that there are people who have more responsibility than others. We normally say we have common but differentiated responsibility. So we are saying that there are people who have found themselves where they are now at the expense of others. And when I say that, I mean some countries have industrialized more. They started this process. They've had decades and centuries of industrialization. They are where they are at the expense of other countries. And when I say at the expense, it means they've been emitting while these other countries have actually not have contributed as much in the mission. So when we talk about responsibility, it's important to say that for sure, there are nations that need to take high ambition. They need to have high ambition on this. They have more responsibility. And we are now talking about international cooperation for us to fight this. We are saying, the Global South is saying that, guys, also we need to industrialize. We are developing nations. We need, but then the development has to be sustainable. But even with that, it has to be the support of the global north as well in this. So there could be like capacity development, technology transfer. There's so many other international cooperations that need to take place. I mean, we are saying we're in this together, but then there are people who need to really do more than others.
Sure. So when we say that industrialization and manufacturing takes place, I mean, it's a no-brainer. It's a no-brainer from where we are, that if we're looking at the global south, if we're going to get ourselves out of the things that, cloud up our progress in terms of development, manufacturing and industrialization is top. Mechanization of different sectors needs to happen. We need to start building and making our own, and those processes are through the processes of industrialization. We cannot run away from it. But the question is, if we're going to go ahead and do that in order to ensure and guarantee development to the place where we're able to compete on a global scale, and at the same time mitigate climate change factors, what is it that ought to be done? Look at the climate, and we're talking about this anthropogenic contribution towards climate change. All right, we get it, that there's certain things that we do as humans that affect the climate, but there also must be something that can be done to either reduce the negative effects or to claw back on some of those retrogressive activities.
I think that's an interesting question, and I think it's important to say that we do not necessarily have to industrialize the way they did. We're now talking about sustainable development. So we are saying we could use sources of power, sources of energy that are more sustainable. So we can use renewable energy, for example. And Africa has a huge resource in renewable energy. Kenya is leading, for example, in that. So we are tapping our renewable energy. We don't necessarily have to use coal or other dirty sources of energy to industrialize. But then, yes, I agree that we need to industrialize. It's important for us to industrialize. But then with the international cooperation, because also utilizing these resources is capital intensive as well. So we need a lot of international cooperation to work together towards this, to help the global south industrialize. So, but then it's really important to say that if we look at sustainable development, which is a very key word, and a lot of people have talked about leapfrogging, and we can do that actually by utilizing our renewable resources in a way that it can enable us to, leapfrog, to be able to be at par with the global north. It might not be easy, but then that's why I say it needs really a lot of support. It needs a lot of cooperation, a lot of conversations. What needs to be done, and I'm a very big advocate of African solutions for African problems. I think we have the solutions with us. There's a lot of neglect on even the use of indigenous knowledge, for example, in our farming systems, in our way we do things, and even the way we understand the climate, for example, and the way we address the impacts of climate change, and the way we adapt to the changes. So, I mean, there's a lot. I mean, there's a huge potential, for example, for Africa. I'm speaking for Africa here, but this can actually just, it cuts across all the global south. But I mean, in Africa, there's huge potential for us to we have so much resources at hand. We just have to be organized. We need to have real conversations among ourselves. We need to know what exactly we want to get us to where we want to go. And I think that is something that can happen. And I'm optimistic that this would happen in our continent.
You know, these discussions, I often find them puzzling. You know why? It is clear that we have very drastic climate changes, some of which one can't easily even predict. But at the same time now, when one goes into history, you know, in my reading, I came across a term that I didn't even know existed, but I came across it anyway. Paleoclimatologist. I know of paleontologists, but this is now paleoclimatologist. When one looks at the various ages that this planet has been through, the ice age we've had 5 ice ages, yes, for instance. Now, what is interesting, that has been interspaced with periods of extreme cold where icicles formed almost everywhere. And then the converse happened. Then you had periods of extreme heat when ice melted. So there are things which are similar to this day and age where you find extreme drought on the one hand, then more rain than you know what to do with on the other. And so there are those who argue, but these changes and these patterns and these extremities have been experienced in the past. Even when there wasn't a single factory on earth, we didn't even know the word factory existed. So, but now we have a situation that mirrors what was seen before, but oddly enough, it seems to be more adverse. Is it that we know more? We are many in terms of those who are affected. So the discussion now encompasses the numbers as well as now the knowledge we now have of what happens. But when you have that discussion, the question that comes now to my mind when I look at all this is, now I'm bordering on conspiracy theory. Yeah, what I'm about to say borders on conspiracy theory. Do we really have a climate change problem?
Yeah, I know it sounds like a conspiracy indeed.
I'm asking because what we're experiencing is new to us, but I'm saying it has happened before.
Okay, I really enjoy this discussion. I mean, I really enjoy, especially that part of the conversation, because when you ask that, it's as a climate scientist, I've been asked that question, or rather, I have encountered that question like I can't remember the number of times, and I understand why it's a pertinent question. It's because people want to understand like what's so different in this time, like. Why? I mean, why are we so much in this conversation? Why are we so alarmed? And you talked about paleoclimate. So paleoclimate, they look at the historical sort of records of climate data.
Yes, they do.
They look at tree rings, for example. They look at rock sediments or such like things. So they dig into the past to understand what might have happened. And I'll give you a very interesting fact. That for the last 2,000 years, we are at the highest warming of our system. I mean, that graph just goes high like that. But definitely, I want to talk about the ice ages that have happened. So what was happening in those times, it was like a sort of a natural variability of the system. Yes. So it goes up and comes down. It goes up and comes down. And the way we said that... in a way, nature sort of knows how to balance itself.
Yes.
So we've had droughts in the past. I'm not saying we've never had droughts. We've had floods, extreme rainfall in the past. We've even had heat waves in the past.
Yes, we have.
Yeah. But for the thing with now is that we have additionally influenced this system. So it's not happening the way it was happening. So it's not the natural variability. And the natural variability is very normal, like something like, I give you a very good example of natural variability of the climate system, something like El Nino. I think many people are conversant with that. That is just as a result of the interaction, we call it the coupling of the ocean and the atmosphere, causes sort of that, so there's like anomalous warming of some part of the Pacific Ocean at a particular time. And it normally has like a 5-year cycle or something like that. So just that is just a good example of like internal variability of the system or a natural variability of the system. But the problem with climate change or the influence of humans on the system is that they've modified the variability of the system, the natural variability of the system. And what exactly I research on, and we call it attribution science, we like understand the role and the contribution of anthropogenic. The human influence bit of it is that we try to see these floods, these droughts, these heat waves, how has climate change modified them? Of course, they used to happen, yes. Yeah. But are they becoming more frequent?
And are we saying then that the factor that has made them become more frequent is then human?
Exactly.
The human contribution is what is making things worse.
Yeah. Or the magnitude. Like, for example, we would have... like we're now seeing like multi-year droughts, for example, in Horn of Africa. We never used to see that before. Of course, it has happened. We've had droughts in the past. But we're sort of starting to see like a very extended period of drought. We are starting to see like tropical cyclones come all the way to Tanzania and even hit all the way into Malawi. And we are seeing a possibility of them going even further. So we are trying to say that these things have happened in the past, but what climate change is doing is sort of modifying them.
To become a little bit crazier, essentially.
Crazier.
I think that the mitigation towards this is probably then where our conversation ought to go. And we're going to take a break and then come back and look at some of these and say, okay, so then it's doom and gloom. You've told us things are going so terribly wrong. What then ought we to do to make it better, or at least to slow down the degradation process? It's 28 minutes to 8 o'clock. Kenya's biggest conversation continues. And then I'm going to ask you to imagine if you lived in a place where you could work and play in a neighborhood that was designed to give you the best quality of life. Just take a moment and imagine. And then you can place yourself in green spaces, take a morning or evening run, or sit and watch your kids play in the park where your safety and security are well taken care of. Imagine. Have you ever thought about having a location that is easily accessible with minimum traffic, paved roads, supply of water, electricity? Imagine. And then wake up to the reality that it can actually happen. Centum says you can have this at any one of their 1 or 2 bedroom apartments just around the Two Rivers area. And then you think to yourself, how can I make that happen? They also have said, go to your bank, ask them about the Kenya Mortgage Refinance Company. It's a home back loan, and they will be able to give you information on that. And you say, I want it. And they say, okay, so that we can make your dreams a reality. You can take a mortgage at 8 to 9%. And you have that for a maximum period of 25 years. So your imagination can become a reality with Centum. It's 27 minutes to 8 o'clock. Kenya's conversation, biggest conversation. Back in a moment.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
The following takes place from 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. every weekday on Spice FM.
You tune into Kenya's biggest conversation. My name is Ramanyan.
Amen. Amen.
So 1 hour is over?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
It gets over
Can you imagine
in 20 minutes.
what the big boys have also done?
I'm very proud of myself.
When you understand about partnership in politics, it's like the way marriage is these days. When you're looking for a wife, you're like, oh, maybe you can help me pay for fees as I pay for the rent.
Why should you have a lioness living in your bedroom?
I have to tell you a story. I went for a prayer meeting, which was called for the spouses of candidates for senators and governors. And when I got to the gate, the lady who was the secretary, she refused to. She's telling me, no. Leo tunataka wa mama. Leo ni wa mama. I'm telling her, no. She said, no, sio siku yenu. And I thought, there's a problem here, because if it was a man, but this was a lady.
It will be called First Ladies until you change the name.
The situation.
Close your eyes. Imagine your unsecured personal loan application has been approved. Imagine all the things you can do and buy. Imagine all the life goals you can achieve. Now stop imagining. Talk to your employer to switch to I&M at Work and get access to Kenya's largest unsecured personal loan of up to 10 million shillings. Call 0719 088 000 today. I&M. Tunakujali.
Mostly cloudy conditions at 15 in Nairobi, highs of 22. We'll come back down to lows of 15. It's cloudy at 16 in Nakuru, highs of 25. And 16 and cloudy in Nyeri, highs of 23. 15 and sunny conditions in Eldoret, highs of 25. And we'll see highs of 30 in a cloudy Mombasa at 25. At 26, it's sunny in Malindi, highs of 30. And we'll see highs of 30 as well in a partly sunny Kisumu at 20. At 17, Kakamega is mostly cloudy, highs of 27, and it's cloudy at 20 in Kampala, highs of 28. 30 will be the high in a sunny Dar es Salaam at 27, and at 10, it's mostly cloudy in Johannesburg, highs of 19. Lagos is cloudy at 26, going to highs of 32, and it's mostly clear at 24 in Kinshasa, going to highs of 32.
Spice up your life.
All right, we're looking at it very busy on Gong Road this morning as you're getting out towards the CBD. It's going to come into contact with what's coming off of Haile Selassie. That's coming off of very busy Landis and Kamkunji at the roundabout into the CBD. We're also looking at heavy traffic coming off Mombasa Road. It's going to seep a little bit into the back roads of Nairobi West and then trying to come out again on Langata Road and then out through the Nyayo Stadium roundabout. So that's a little beehive of activity right there. Busy on Jogo Road, as we've seen earlier. You should be all right coming off Mombasa Road now, going towards the Nyayo Stadium roundabout, but there's a little bit of traffic as you get into that nook just after the Nyayo Stadium roundabout. All right, what are we looking at? On North Airport Road, some traffic, and it's going out towards the Eastern Bypass. It'll take some time to get out of that, but not too crazy right now. Busy traffic morning, but stuff that we can keep together. On James Gishuru, a little bit of it as you flip over towards Wayaki Way, and it's also quite busy as you're coming off of Kiambu Road into the city. Talk to us about what's going on where you are on Spice FM KE on Twitter.
Welcome to Spice FM, the best exclusive radio station bringing you the best mix of the best music ever. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM.
We're having a climate conversation this morning, but I want to remind you this morning that even as you think about tough economic times and how you're going to make things happen here or there, I&M Bank is giving the biggest unsecured personal loan today at 10 million shillings. What do you need? You need to walk in with your payslip if you're salaried and a letter from your employer. And I&M will say, have a seat. Let's have this conversation. We can give you the money that you need and we'll give you 8 years to pay it. 96 months is 8 years. And I&M says, don't even think about it. Come, sit down and let's have a chat about how we can make this happen. I&M Bank says, tunakujali. Now, are we jollying about the weather? Joyce Kimutai is with us in the studio this morning and we're having a conversation about human contribution towards climate change. So, yeah, it has been doom and gloom. COP27 was doom and gloom. The COP before that was maybe even worse. We're going to Dubai for COP28, and already the conversation is, no. We can be clamoring and having these conversations about the North and the South, the East and the West and their contribution. But the bottom line is that something has to be done. Before we went to the break, Joyce, we're talking about CT's conspiracy, maybe not too far from the mark here, that these cyclical events took place historically. But you've said, yes, they did, and they're still happening. But what is making them worse is the human factor. So what are we going to do? Are we going to move to Mars? I mean, we're here, right? So what happens?
Maybe we might have to go to Mars at some point if we do nothing. I mean, for sure. As in,
are you saying we are too many for the Earth to sustain?
Well, the way we're behaving is bad manners.
We are saying that we are so bad-mannered. Sorry to use that word, but I think that is true, in a way that we are forgetting that we actually have only this planet. People have started talking about Mars, but we're not sure if it's habitable. We are not sure if we're going to survive there. So we have to do something about the only home we have. Mm-hmm. And for sure, the main key things is reduction of greenhouse gases. That is number one on the list. It's a priority. And our biggest responsibility has to come from the biggest emitters. And these are China, India, and other countries. I mean, those are the biggest emitters so far. They have to, step up their game. And also we're saying, but because the damage has already been done, you talked about COP27, COP26. Mm-hmm. One interesting that came out of COP27, and I'm happy about it. It could be the only thing, but to me, I think it was a positive thing to me. Is the fact that we started really having real conversations on compensation for loss and damages, and I'm going to explain what that means. It means that the damage that has been done already is to a point where we can't adapt, and what that means is. So in adaptation, we have there's a term called soft limits of adaptation, and we have the hard limits. The soft limits is when we still have feasible, the measures for adaptation are still feasible, and we can still put them in place. But when you talk about hard limits to adapt to climate change, it means there's really nothing much we can do other than just absorb the impacts. And most countries that are highly vulnerable now are crying and saying, guys, because of the historical responsibility that you had, you really have to support us in reconstruction and rehabilitation. And that is what we call like compensation for losses and damages. And at COP27, there was a funding mechanism for loss and damage that is now. So the debate on like operationalizing that is ongoing. So hopefully by COP28 in Dubai, we'll have like a solid way forward in how that can happen. So what are we saying? We are saying that mitigation is number one. Of course, we need to continually adapt. It's important. But at the same time, we are saying there are communities that are already suffering from this. And we are saying we really need to support them. And the biggest emitters, the countries that are highly responsible for these damages, should actually pay these countries to recover from this, because they need to live their lives. There are islands, for example, like Fiji and other islands that they think in the next 15 or so years, they'll be underwater. So they're saying, we want your support. We will be in water because of you.
Let's localize this a little bit to maybe get a broader, firmer understanding about then what it really means. Because if we're talking about loss and compensation, which is it's a conversation that grabs the headlines of the conferences such as COP. So let's look at Kenya.
Yeah.
You see these climate patterns every day. What do we see in the environment today that points us to this being damaged because of some kind of environmental shift that happened somewhere else?
So, and that is what exactly Attribution Science tries to answer. So, for example, we just published a paper that I was leading on attribution of the drought. And last year I looked at the floods that happened in 2016, 2018, and 2012. And when you find for sure, when you quantify, when you find the quantification or the role of human-induced climate change in sort of increasing the severity of that extreme event, you know for sure that it's humans that are responsible for that. And you look at the damages that resulted from that, and you can say we can directly link that extreme event to those damages that happened. So if people died, if livestock died, if the losses that people lost their property. Sometimes from the floods, they get swept away. So you are saying that it's actually linking the role of humans. And when we talk about the role of humans, we are specifically talking about, the major contributor is greenhouse gases that has warmed the atmosphere, that is directly linked to those impacts. And then you can say, we are making the link. So we are saying, for example, it's because of this quantification that we've made, and it has linked to the impacts that we have, and we are in a situation where we've lost so much as a country. We are spending so much to respond to these extreme events because, the government has spent so much money responding to this. It's really, even like the people, their livelihoods are quite impacted. If you go to the northern Kenya, for example, they're suffering a lot. They're losing their animals, they're dying. It brings out other things like conflict. Because resources become scarce when there's like lack of water, you get. So, there's so much that comes with that, and there's so much damage and impact. And it's not just about like the physical impacts or the economic impacts, but there's also the non-economic impacts, like the mental trauma that people go through. When the droughts in the northern Kenya now have become so common in a way that a Turkana or a Maasai would just know that in the next 2 years, I'm likely to lose this herd of cattle.
So this is the thing. Okay, so if we're looking at extreme conditions that have been caused as a result of warming the earth, greenhouse gases, to which the people in a particular area did not contribute maximally to, and here we are saying that there's then something that you ought to do about it. My question is, what is that? Okay, I'll give you an example. Farmers are told to, replane their soil. You harvest your maize, in the interim plant something else like beans or groundnuts. You put nitrates into the soil and then you get it back so you can plant maize again. Yes? So, and that's something that they can do. They see it, we can do it so that we will have a better harvest later. We're not going to plant on the same soil again because we're just we keep taking away from the soil. Do something that's going to put back. And my question is, that doing something that's going to put back? Whereas the thing that caused this trauma that you're going through, you didn't do it. So what are you then supposed to do as a country like Kenya or Ethiopia or Uganda, if we're just looking at this basin area? What are you supposed to do? What should policies actually look like to reverse some of the damage, if possible, or to secure the environment for the future? What needs to happen? That's an interesting question, and I like it, and the reason for that is that we might say that for sure it's the emitters that are responsible for this. So there's the historical responsibility. It has happened, but I think the way you said that, it's also really upon us to look at ourselves and say, what can we do about this? So. It's sad that, for example, we might at one point say the livestock, the pastoral communities might have to change their livelihoods. But to me, I see it as a very feasible. I see as the climate continues to warm, I see that as happening, but I'm not. I don't want to talk about that because that's a very drastic thing. But I thought it was important to put that to say, actually, we might go into a point where we have to do much more than we think. But then I think what you just said is, I think we have to put policies in place. We have to say, how can we rehabilitate our lands, for example? How can we make them more productive? How can we call it modifying? So it's like microclimates. You have to modify the local climate to absorb the shocks. We have to improve like the early warning system. For example, as Kenya Met Department, we have to be able to warn early enough. We have to be able to inform
the responding arms of the government early enough about, like, for example, a drought that is coming, an extreme rainfall that is coming, to say we need to respond early enough so that we don't get to react to these events when they happen. We don't have to say, people are already dying in northern Kenya and we need to buy food, social security protection, or, distribution of cash or something like that. I mean, we have to understand that things have changed. I think that is very important. We have to understand that the system has changed, and we have to change the ways we're doing things. So we have to change our ways, for example. And I use the example of, livestock keeping might have to change, but I'm not saying that has to change. I'm just saying that we have to see that things are not the same. I mean, they're not. It's not business as usual anymore. Like, we have to do better. We have to see how. We have to look at, for example, local indigenous crops that can do well. Drought-resistant crops, for example, that can do well in areas that have now become very prone to droughts. We have to harvest water, for example, when there's extreme rainfall, so that we can use this water when the drought comes. So we have to really change the ways we are doing things. We have to educate our pastoralists on how they can prepare better for a drought. If they have to sell their livestock and then regain it back so that they don't have to wait for all of them to die and incur all those losses. So we are saying the conversation, the narrative has to change, because things are changing. We have to completely change the way we do our things. And it trickles down all the way from, I think, the policies that we design at the government, at the national level, all the way to the county level, to the communities. So, we have to do a lot of community education in order to build their resilience. So we are saying communities have to be more resilient to these shocks. They have to learn to adapt better. How can they be more food secure even as this climate changes? Of course, we'll be waiting. There's the international, cooperation to address this issue, but there is the role of the local people to say that as much as this is an issue that is affecting us, as much as this is a global issue and there's a responsibility of other people, we also have our own personal responsibilities and roles to play in adapting and combating this.
This conversation, there's an area of it that I'm at least stuck, like a dog with a bone. It's this conversion of CO2 into oxygen and balancing these negative emissions and all these things converging on forest cover. And scientists like our delightful sister here who study earth and environmental sciences will tell you that they even have formulas where they'll tell you this quantity of negative harmful emissions can be absorbed by this number of green cover, forest cover, and what have you. Now, 31% of this planet has forest cover. Yeah? Are we saying that the forest cover that we have has been overwhelmed by the emissions that we have, and that this balance and this science that tells us how it is this balance can come about has also been overwhelmed? What are we saying?
We are saying exactly that, and I will explain. We are so last year we just released this. So we normally have like a 5 cycle of doing a global scientific report on climate change, and it's done by a panel called Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. And there's a report that came out last year saying that the effectiveness of the natural sinks is declining rapidly. So you're saying that the trees, 31% that we have in the globe, the effectiveness of that, the efficacy of that is going down drastically.
Why?
So because we are overwhelming these things. We are not allowing the system to balance. We are continually
burdening it
in a way that it's becoming untenable for it to take what it's supposed to take. It's like saying, I can't take this is too much for me. I can't take this much. And so that is it. But
would growing more trees help?
So that's a conversation that I would really like to talk about it today, because I think there's a lot of, I can't call it misconception, but I'll just call it lack of sort of the scientific understanding of, or like, you know, like there's the interdependence of like climate, biodiversity, and people. So, and climate action, actually, it's really important to talk about like sustainable development when you're talking about climate action, eradication of poverty, especially in countries that are in the global south, for example. So we're talking about food insecurity, for example. So we are saying, how much of the arable land we have? Do we want to plant trees in all these lands? And what about food security?
But are trees the only? Are they the only plants we have on the planet that can help?
That can help this situation.
Yes.
Because that's the gospel that has been preached. Yeah.
No, it's not only trees. It's any sort of plant, any green matter will absorb. It's only that trees have sort of because you know it has
the size,
you know, the surface area. So like I mean a sink rate or a sink proportion of one tree may be sort of equivalent to like 4 other plants, small plants. You get what I mean? So I'm saying that's why like trees have like sort of a bigger sinking capacity. But then trees is not the only solution. We can do agroforest, for example. We can say we can plant our trees and plant our crops and see. We can look at other crops, like other green matter that can be put on land, which at the same time will support our food systems, will make us food secure, but at the same time we are sinking our carbon. Because there's a real issue now with there's a term called maladaptation, and maladaptation is it's unintended adverse impacts in the process of adapting to climate change. So you were saying, for example, I wanted to plant trees to adapt to climate change, but then you are either destroying the ecosystem around there, or you are affecting the food security of the people living there. So it's like you're not providing solutions per se, but rather you're creating problems. So there should be that really balance of saying, how much do we need to do, and what measures do we need to put in place to adapt to climate change? But at the same time, we want to develop. We want to be food secure. We want to feed our people. People need food and water.
You know, every time we talk about trees and food security, it's as though the two are separate. But there are trees that would actually help you with food security because they actually produce food.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
Isn't it also time that there seem to be so many talking heads in this climate change conversation? Isn't it time for some kind of streamlining for everybody who's involved in this conversation to come together, because that's what then would be able to fuel policy, and then now we start to have the conversations and the actions around these things that you're talking about. Everybody says, well, let's plant a tree. Is there something in this area that can be done differently? It's about time that folks stop working in silos and come together on this climate change per country.
Yeah, I mean, that is one of the biggest discussions going on at the moment. Like there's a call for a lot of transdisciplinary, multidisciplinary. I mean, when for example, we started understanding about when the understanding of climate change started, and when like the sort of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change was formed in 1988, there was still the understanding of like looking at the physical sciences on its own, looking at the adaptation on its own, social science on its own. But now we are at the point where we cannot work like that anymore. We have to work together. People from the energy sector, from the water sector, if it's for scientists like us who are doing like sort of the natural understanding of the system or the physical understanding of the system, we need to work together, because then our efforts have to be in line. We shouldn't be having this voice saying this and this voice saying this. And you know, I think everyone has, of course, a space in all this, but at the same time, I think if we put our efforts together, we're going to move even faster and better.
Indeed. Joyce Kimutai, climate scientist with the Kenya Meteorological Department, thank you for joining us this morning. Obviously a conversation that cannot stop even as action is taking place. Come again. The conversation continues, and we hope that you'll be with us to talk about it again in the future. Asante sana for being on Kenya's biggest conversation this morning. As the climate conversation continues, we hope you'll join us again in the future.
Thank you so much for having me, and I really enjoyed this conversation. Thank you so much.
Indeed, Kenya's biggest conversation continues. It's a punctuation conversation at 8 o'clock with Nandi Senator Samson Cherargei, and we'll have that conversation coming in after the news. It continues right after this. Thanks for keeping us Kenya's biggest conversation. We come back right after this.
Spice up your life.
This is News. I am Dennis Aseto. John Muteti has been appointed the new acting Chief Executive Officer of the National Authority for the Campaign Against Alcohol and Drug Abuse. Professor Muteti's appointment, which takes effect from Monday, was announced by NACADA Board Chairperson Stephen Mairori. In a statement, Mairori said Muteti will be instrumental in steering the authority's mandate, noting that he has a wealth of over 30 years' experience from the academia, private and public sectors. And Taita Taveta Governor Andrew Mwadime has dismissed claims of misappropriation of funds during the World War I celebrations in November 2022. Speaking at the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission headquarters after being summoned by the commission, Mwadime says claims that his administration had misappropriated 8 million shillings were false and that the funds used during the event were minimal compared to previous administrations. EACC is investigating allegations of corruption, procurement irregularities and embezzlement of public funds by officials of the Taita Taveta County government in the celebrations of World War I that took place between 23rd and 26th of November 2022. The allegations revolve around the conflict of interest, abuse of office, embezzlement of public funds and violation of procurement laws and regulations. And the State Department of Correctional Services has initiated a plan to decongest prisons across the country. Principal Secretary in the department, Mary Muthoni, said that they're working with the judiciary so that inmates with minor offences can be released. Muthoni also said that offenders who had children below 2 years would also be considered in the decongestion plan.
We are working very hard together with the judiciary to see that we are reducing the numbers in our prison facilities. Children in prison, first and foremost, we are fast-tracking, the judiciary is fast-tracking the cases of women who are petty offenders to ensure that the children who are very young, the children who are in prison are below 2 years. Therefore, if we can get them out of prison, the very best.
And Chief Justice Martha Koome has promised to deploy alternatives to pre-trial detention such as diversion, alternative justice systems and plea bargaining to address challenges posed by incarceration of pending trial. Speaking during the start of the Africa Regional Colloquium on enhancing the delivery of justice by addressing pre-trial detention challenges, Koome said the principle of innocent until proven guilty remains sacrosanct in the pursuit of justice. And the Director of Public Prosecutions has withdrawn a case against politician and businessman Jimmy Wanjigi, his wife and 4 others on alleged forgery of a title deed for a piece of land in Westlands and uttering a false document. A Milimani court allowed the application after new evidence established that the real perpetrators of fraud had already been charged. Wanjigi never answered to the charges but instead moved to the High Court and obtained orders stopping his prosecution. And the Nairobi City County has procured 19 new vehicles to drive efficiency and to better serve the people of Nairobi. Governor Johnson Sakaja says the majority of the new vehicles will be deployed to the Security and Compliance Department and Inspectorate to replace the battered, dilapidated vehicles on the road commonly used by county constables. The governor noted that improved revenue collection, especially in the first 4 months of this year, has enabled the county to acquire these new vehicles and to invest in infrastructure development. Other departments to receive the vehicles include revenue, health, environment, and social services, among others. And the road to Mars is long and fraught with peril. One challenge is getting humans to the red planet. Another is ensuring that once they arrive there, they'll be able to manage life there. To prepare astronauts for an extended stay on Mars, NASA's latest simulation mission, Crew Health and Performance Exploration Analog, will isolate 4 people inside a mock Mars base in Texas for 378 days, roughly the time a manned mission to Mars would spend on the surface. Once inside, they will adopt a pre-planned schedule, taking part in simulated activities and science work, eating like astronauts and dealing with maintenance and equipment failures while undergoing strenuous psychological and physiological testing. Meanwhile, 5 petitioners want court to order government to declare climate change a national disaster. The 5, Julie Atieno Ogola, John Anyara Emukule, Caroline Kanai Mutemi, Denzel Munge Sembele, and Naomi Mpara Nyariki, argue that the government is doing too little to prevent dangerous climate change from occurring in Kenya. The petitioners are also seeking an order compelling the government to limit the volume of greenhouse gas emissions in the country from manufacturers, as well as an order instructing the government to act more ambitiously to ensure realization of abating greenhouse gas emissions by 30% by the year 2030. I'm Dennis Aseta. Good morning.
Traffic on Vibes Radio.
Good morning, my neighbors.
Good morning, Prayo.
Ongeza volume.
Oh, yeah, nini ya music?
Si yako.
Good morning, Aseli, manze.
Ongelesha na heshima wewe.
Sawa, baba.
This is the Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latif, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is the Situation Room. The only way to start your...
6 minutes after 8 o'clock. Good morning, and how are you doing? Welcome to our audiences online, on our live streams on YouTube and Facebook, and to our audience on KTN Home this morning. The conversation shifts gears this morning, but even as we do that, I already started from the morning saying that we're going to have a punctuation conversation this morning. It's punctuation hour on Kenya's biggest conversation. Nandi County Senator joins us this morning, Senator Samson Cherargei. Yamune.
Listen.
See, we're learning slowly.
Yeah, you're learning.
Thank you for being here this morning. Even as we start off the conversation, I'll tell you about Assist Tea. There's a tea that is being manufactured in this country. There are variants of this tea that are being manufactured in this country. Value add is happening in this country. It's being sold on the Kenyan market, and then it's also being exported as well, and it's happening here. Variants of lemon, ginger, hibiscus, purple tea, green tea, plain golden black tea. It's fantastic, and it's happening here. Kiptegich is the company that produces this, going to the plains of Bomet, and it's available across the country. A cup of Assist tea is what you want to have any time of the day, and it's fantastic, happening around the country. As we welcome you this morning with a cup of tea, we also welcome you with today's proverb. CT.
Our proverbs for the whole of this week come from the country of Eritrea. A liar sweats twice as much as an honest man. A liar sweats twice as much as an honest man. I don't know what it is that the Eritreans observed when they came up with this, but that's their proverb for today.
Senator.
Morning.
Good morning. What do you think about that?
Of course, it's obvious. Lying needs an art. So, you're not a good liar. And even the Bible talks about lying is as worse than any other sin. So it's important that I think that was a correct observation.
It was.
Because even if when you go home and you get your child eating sugar, they will dilate, the eyes will dilate, they will sweat, they will get confused. So I think that was correct observation.
And it can be, translated into today. One is assuming that this proverb was historic, but today it's interesting to see whether when people are telling the truth and lying, the face and the moisture on the face can actually tell or help you.
Correct.
Isn't it?
Yes.
Okay. We're still having conversations about the finance bill, Senator, and you've joined us for that. And I've called it a punctuation conversation because you were categorical in no full stop, no comma. This bill will not be touched. It is going as is. It was you.
Yep, it was me.
Let's just start with what made you say that.
Thank you very much, and thank you for inviting me again. It's always wonderful to be here. But I'm not used to you sitting there, but it's good.
Sometimes things...
I'm used to Eric sitting there and you sitting to me. So it's always good to be here. I know C.T. Muga is following that statement keenly. But it's good. I hope I'll be able to get a cup of tea, especially with ginger, because today morning is very, very, very cold. Because, I come from the county where 80% we grow tea.
Yes.
And I can tell you which is the best tea leaves to use. So maybe you can allow me to a professional tester after the show to confirm to consumers. But I believe it's the best from the look of it. And I hope I can buy one of the supermarkets and also test.
Yes.
A quick one is that I think this issue of finance bill, I saw you have been having a couple of guests. As a country where we are, it is not, we are not sitting pretty. I think late last year when the Kenya Kwanza took over, and even ran up to the general election, everybody were concerned about the economy. What we are now is there are only two options, my sister and city, is that the country is on the cliff in terms of economy. There are two things that are available to the country. Either we continue to borrow more or we tax. Borrowing more is no longer tenable. You are aware, Parliament, and it is good to go on record that I voted twice when they were raising public debt ceiling. So you can see I've been consistent, and you can check with the answer.
You were voting to make sure that the ceiling reaches maximum capacity.
No, I resisted the public debt ceiling on several occasions, and I remember we were 7 senators then, and you can check with the answer of the Senate, because as we talk, the public debt is around 9 trillion. In fact, to just give a brief synopsis, this 9 trillion is under Article 202. The first charge to, under Article 202 of the Constitution, the first charge in payment is the public debt. The country is paying over 1 trillion in public debt. The president, in his projection of collecting tax, is 2.2 trillion Kenya shillings. The financial budget of 2023-2024 is 3.6 trillion. We are paying that of more than around 1.2 trillion Kenya shillings. We have a budget of 3.6 trillion Kenya shillings. We have a deficit budget on the table. Borrowing is no longer tenable because we will risk, and the president, you saw the president and you media are present in that interview at the State House, read by Eric Latif. And the president, you could hear that we don't want to risk this country going to other countries, I don't want to mention names, where you will carry around 5 kilos of banknotes to buy a loaf of bread. So the issue is that we must tax. And I want to tell Kenyans, there are no new taxes that are being introduced. These are just traditional taxation that has been. When you look at the finance bill, I know the main concern are two things. Housing levy fund, about 3%, which is not a tax. It is a saving, and it is providing for mortgage housing program. And you know, under Article 43, it talks about social economic rights. And one of the rights is basics like food, shelter, and clothes. And housing is very important in terms of human rights compliance. Number 2 is on the issue of VAT on fuel, where it has been moved from 8% to 16%, where under the recommendation of IMF, we have been able to remove fuel subsidy. If you have been following Senate proceedings, I did raise through the Energy Committee a couple of weeks ago into investigating what happened to fuel subsidy. Because as we talk, Sports Fund gave 34 billion to payment of fuel subsidy. As we talk, the Minister of Energy, there is a line of people who provided fuel under subsidy in this country who are still being owed billions. It is not small money that went to fuel subsidy. Just the way Unga subsidy used to operate like happy hour. I don't drink, but I'm told when you go to a bar, there is always a happy hour. So you could find Unga being sold at certain supermarkets, and then it is finished. So it was no longer sustainable. And you are aware, when you talk about subsidy, it is important that when you subsidize at consumption level as opposed to production, it's not sustainable. So that is why I'm saying the way the finance bill is, it should be passed as it is, because one, those people at the bottom need resources to get good roads, to get housing, to get drugs in hospital, to get bursary, to get subsidized fertilizers, among other, for production.
Sure.
So the point is, I've heard people saying you are abandoning the hustlers and the people at the bottom. But those people at the bottom, if we do not provide taxes as at now, how will you provide services to them? Finally, on my point is that I've seen, and what the government and the president has committed is, and from where I've sat and we have had conversation with him, is to ensure we close on tax exemptions. You know, it was ridiculous because I was in the previous parliament where exemptions were being given to some organizations in this country, and we know one of them, and I don't want to mention because it's a court matter, up to 300 million. Yet the law provides that you can only give tax exemption to disabled.
And you were in parliament when these things were being passed, but you sat, because this is the thing. And I think that's the conversation, Senator, among some of these things, is that a lot of complaints are being made today about things that happened when they were able-bodied, warm, blood-pumping individuals sitting in the National Assembly, and these things passed. These things happened. But then we take and are able to hold the reservation and complain about them today. But there were people in Parliament. 5 years ago, there were people in Parliament. 4 years ago, there were people in Parliament. 9 months ago, there were people in Parliament.
I agree with you, but what I'm saying, for example, I've used public debt ceiling. When that matter came to Senate, it's only 7 of us who voted against raising of public debt ceiling. But as they say, majority have their way and minority have their say. There are people who have opposed that exemption. But it was done, and that is why that matter is now going to court. I'm told the company might end up being fined up to more than 1 billion Kenya shillings. So I'm saying the reason I'm just building up the conversation is that now we need to give out tax exemptions that are not necessary because that company is not disabled. The law only recognizes the marginalized and disabled that could be. And then another issue is about tax reliefs. How do we ensure we don't? There was allegations I think came out this year that some of the goods from China they did not pay tax for 470 billion.
Okay.
So you can see, my sister, that close to 1 trillion Kenya shillings were being given either tax reliefs and tax exemptions. If we seal and ensure that there is a proper collection of taxation, city, is we shall ensure that we maximize collection in terms of it. And therefore, when you look at finance bill, I don't think there is something that as a country we have an option for. It is. I know it's painful. I know there are Kenyans outside there that cannot afford 3 square meal. I know there are Kenyans out there that cannot pay the school fees. But we must be. This is a turbulent moment for economy in this country, and we must make a painful decision that the only option we have to do is not to borrow more. We maintain, as the president has brought to parliament, and when we were passing, we were looking at budget estimates and budget policy statement, is in comparison with GDP. So in my own opinion, I know under Article 118 you will ask what is the role of Kenyans in such process.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, the legislative process is there where Article 118 provide for public participation by Parliament.
Mm-hmm.
We shall listen to Kenyans. Those opinions and views of Kenyans will inform the future decision. And I want to tell the country...
Will they really, Senator? I'm sorry, I have to interject here. Because you're saying that, and it seems like window dressing to me. It seems like it's, well, okay, according to 118, we have to do it. So let's just do it. But you've been categorical stating that nothing about this bill is going to change. So it almost flies in the face of the rights of Kenyans that are constitutionally bound to be able to participate in decisions that are essentially being made on their behalf. So if you say nothing about this bill is going to change, public participation is taking place today, it's almost as though you're saying, well, yeah, you can participate, but nothing is going to change.
But you know, what I can say at this point is that that is why you interjected me when I was finishing, that some of these views will inform our future decisions.
Oh, for example, so for this bill, it's not going to be...
For example, under the Finance Bill 2023, we can still amend at some point. You know, the Parliament, of course, under Article 93, Parliament means Senate and the National Assembly. It means we can still amend this law, because we have the power of lawmaking. We can either amend, repeal, or even create a new bill. And therefore, you know that where we are is the country is in a economic crisis, that we need to pass this bill to allow government to get resources to start implementing. Let me tell you and be categorical and be honest here. If we do not pass this finance bill as is, not ought to be, we will do nothing for the next financial year or even 4 years.
Okay.
And yet Kenyans will demand that Mombasa Road lower deck to be
what
fixed.
What do you mean we will do nothing, Mheshimiwa? I mean, already we don't have that bill operationalized, and we're doing a great deal.
Which is?
Well, we are doing what we're doing. You know, you people are making laws.
Yes.
We are talking about, essentially what we're doing more than anything else is we are talking. Okay?
Okay.
Yes.
Agreed.
Now, you are therefore saying that with the finance bill, beyond the talking, we are going to see some monumental changes. Walk us through this. What are these changes that we are likely to see?
Thank you, City. I know the country is moving, it look like, but are you aware county governments were almost shutting down? You are aware, and even you asked me, I think we have a discussion the last time I was here at Devolution. Are you aware there are no quorums in county assemblies? Because and you know county assemblies are important in budget program. The financial year we are in is the financial year of the previous administration of former President Uhuru Kenyatta. This is the first financial year under William Ruto's government. Yeah. And therefore we had a manifesto, we had a plan. And this plan need to be financed.
It is true, but this plan took into account what it is that you are going to inherit. You cannot tell me that a political party went full throttle to seek political power and didn't understand what it is that they stood to inherit. You inherited a certain government, just like Uhuru Kenyatta and William Ruto inherited something. Everyone inherits.
Yes.
Now, here we are with what was inherited. And you are telling us that with the finance bill, you now want to right certain wrongs and you want to set us on a path of recovery. And I'm asking, what exactly do we anticipate to see?
Thank you, City. What I can say is that the reason I was making that comment is that the reason this finance bill and the budget has been drawn is in accordance with the plan and the manifesto. The easiest option for the president was to continue borrowing from both local and international lenders. The president has said, no, we must stop. And you remember when he was campaigning, you are the media, you covered him. And he said that the issue of public debt is not tenable. I remember when the interview, one of your colleagues were interviewing in that choir here. And the only way is that now we have the plan. The Kenya Kwanza has taken over government. This plan must be financed, but the option of borrowing is no longer tenable. And that is why we are turning in now and saying, Kenyans, can we kindly, with a lot of respect, come back and relook and try and collect revenue. I've given an example where tax exemptions and reliefs were being given unjustifiable and illegal without following the law.
Okay.
And I can tell you, I know you'll ask me, yes, we are paid tax, what follows? The president has committed that the issue of public wastage will be stopped. The issue of corruption, which is eating, I agree, because kulipa ushuru ni kujitegemea. When you pay tax, and I sat with somebody who has lived in the States for 20 years, and when this finance bill came, we sat down, and he told me, I don't have a problem paying tax. But I told him, the reason you don't have a problem paying tax is because in US, your tax works for you. You get the public transport works, the roads are fixed, there is water, there is gas supplied to you, there is drugs in hospital, and therefore I told them, for you there you can pay. But now the only challenge to government, and the president is seized of this, is that Kenyans, yes, will pay this tax, but this tax must work for Kenyans so that Kenyans are motivated. Because the three of us who are sitting here, if you pay tax and you see working, I don't think you'll have a problem on paying tax. So the issue is that this budget that is being drawn, and I've told you it's a deficit budget already. Even if we were to collect the highest that the KRA has projected is 2.2 trillion Kenyan shillings, that is revenue. And the budget that Ndindi Nyoro-led committee is as proposed is 3.6 trillion. So we still have a lot of, and if you remember in the projection of this budget, the president ensured through line ministries that at least 400 billion was reduced, and he had promised that around 300 billion had been removed. So what I'm saying, that finance bill, 400
billion was reduced.
Yes.
Where?
There are some number. If we had gone with the way the proposals of ministries, what we call budget estimates, because what happened, the budget making process is that counties had proposed 425 billion. The CRA had proposed 447 billion. The Senate passed 385 billion. So the line ministries, I know where you are going. The line ministries, comes with proposal with estimates.
Yes.
So those estimates were being cut down in terms, especially on the issues of where they are spending on traveling allowances, among other capacity trainings and what have you. So most of them were cut down.
That's not a saving, because it was never spent. That's not a saving. It was a suggestion of what they could have spent, but they said, okay, let's just not add it to the line.
But the president had said in the coming financial year he will try and cut down, looking at the revenue that we might end up collecting.
But it didn't work, because clearly we still have a bigger budget than there was the last time.
But looking at the projections that had been provided by the finance people, if we had done, we would have been looking at 4.2 trillion budget.
Whereas laymen have a problem,
yes,
is we do simple arithmetic. If you tell us there's a reduction and yet the budget we have is more than the one we previously had, so we then ask,
we're still looking for the reduction.
Where's the reduction? Because reduction in our mind, the budget needs to go down. That one, clear, we understand reduction. The budget has gone down. And if it goes down, it means what you're saying is evidence in line items within various ministries, the expenses and the costs also going down. But we are talking reduction and yet our budget keeps going up. So I'm a bit confused.
But you have to appreciate that even if the issue we are talking about reduction is they were the ministry's estimates. The president went and directed some of the estimates were not necessary, or some of the projections that the ministry, looking at the collections that you are doing. In fact, in comparison with the public debt that we are paying. So in as much as looking at the previous year, but if we had gone the way it was, we would have gone to 4.2 trillion Kenya shillings. And you remember some of this money was going even to some of the SCAC or state corporations and bailouts. You remember there are some the organizations or parastatals in this country where government has shares that we have to pay. Like in the last, I think December, I can't recall properly, is that around 34-point-something billion was given to KQ for bailout, for example, which that money is going directly to KQ or Kenya Airways, but there's no value for. There are many state corporations that are making losses, and that is why the president has proposed that some of those parastatals, I know there is a tussle whether parliament should be part of approval process. That's a conversation we can still have as a parliament. But some of those corporations are gobbling in money without value for Kenyans, and those are some of the things that the president is looking at to cut down. Because if we are giving 34 billion, for example, to KQ to bail them out, yet there is no value, and yet they are making losses, cities. And I can tell you, Mama Mboga or Boda Boda somewhere from where I come, they have never seen an aeroplane. They only see landing near Eldoret. And they are paying for something that does not give value for them. And I'm not saying Kenya Airways is not important. It is, but we must look at the possibility of restructuring or coming up with viable solutions. I'm using it as an example because it's more alive to even media on what is happening and other organizations. So looking at them, cities that the challenge is ensuring that the 10 shilling you give government, there is value for it. And you saw the president in Jandarua, in conclusion, so that you come in, he said he believes in an accountable government. So my challenge to Kenyans, pay tax. Then we take the president into account.
Okay. Senator, I'm curious, even as this is being looked at, because we cannot run away from the political skew that all of this has.
Correct.
Okay?
Yes.
There is I wouldn't expect that anybody who's aligned to the Kenya Kwanza government would oppose this. I can't.
But there are colleagues who have opposed.
Yeah, well, sure. There are colleagues who've opposed certain parts of it,
yes.
for sure.
Yes.
And the understanding from many Kenyans is that they get it. That those who've opposed it understand what Kenyans are saying. And so for Kenyans, it's not a political thing. It's a survival thing. So for Kenyans who today already have an issue, and this is where now we're saying, how we look at this side, for Kenyans who are living in the trenches today, for whom life is already very difficult, who maybe are not even in the tax brackets,
correct,
but who will buy this fuel that go from 8 to 16, or even if they don't buy the fuel and put in a car, they will get on a matatu, they will get on a bus,
yes,
they will purchase goods,
correct,
they will purchase power, and they will get less power for the shilling.
Accurate.
Because things are going to go up. We cannot run away from that reality. The question is, where do they lie in this equation? And even as you think about that answer, Senator, where on this planet has there ever been taxation towards efficient development?
I knew you were coming there. I don't know why. But those are brilliant. I think that's the honest conversation. And that is why we must tax the rich more and tax less the poor. Even when you go to established democracies like America, I know they have also debt crisis with the Chinese. The aspect is that the issue is that we tax me, city, and you more to provide for those Kenyans. One, they live in shanties. Two, they don't have 3 square meal. 3, they have, and I know a number of Kenyans who work all the way from Kibra through Langata Road trying to get to industrial area to get something to do. And most of the occasions they don't get, just the way we're happening in the villages. So I know that is why you might be talking about tax bracket, but this rising of goods, for example, like when you increase VAT from 8% to 16% of fuel, it will also affect us farmers because we use diesel. And Kenyans also who use koroboi or I don't know how do you call them, these when you are growing kerosene lamps. And
in my community we call them, I am suffocating with laughter.
Why?
If you laugh loudly, it goes off immediately.
So, that's a story. I think that should be a proverb. So I agree with you that most of these Kenyans, which we imagine are not within the tax bracket, but they are affected by this taxation. But the point is, the same people you are talking about is that we must get the levy fund, because there is what we call, this Langata Ring Road that links between Langata Road and Ngong Road. When you drive there and you see Kibra and see how those people are living, when you go to Mukuru Kwanjenga, some of us campaign through the city. Are you happy that you are living in Karen or Phenom Estate or anywhere, but when you are passing, your fellow Kenyans do not have sanitation, do not have clean water, do not have a house? Now it's very cold. Because if we don't get them proper housing, those people will get sick. They will strain Kenyatta National Hospital and Mount Public Hospital for getting drugs. So I agree with you that, but the point is, how should we get these more Kenyans, one, value for the service that we are paying taxation for, number one. Number two, how do we ensure they are within the tax bracket? Because we want to increase the tax base, and that is why we are going for content creators to also pay tax. And it is not optional because YouTube pays them. Where YouTube is domiciled, Facebook and Twitter have been there. They pay tax to the government.
Okay, there's some. I think this balloons into a bigger conversation in terms of then creativity of how this can actually happen. But Senator, let's take a break.
Yes, okay.
And then we'll come back and talk about that because it's absolutely important. How do you see this translating and actually being done? What then will happen with these taxes? Because if there's no comma and there's no full stop, it looks like we're already heading down towards a decision. But okay, we'll come back and have that conversation. I&M Bank is saying the largest unsecured personal loan available to you if you're salaried and you have a letter from your employer. Go sit down, have a chat with I&M today. Up to 8 years to be able to pay back your loan, and it allows you to get through that project or that other thing that you wanted to do. I&M is also saying that 5,000 shillings is up for grabs today. What would you do, or what would you spend it on if you had it today? What are those biting issues? Senator tells us today that we know that life is hard. What are those things that 5,000 shillings from I&M can help you with? Spice FMKE is our social handle for Twitter, Facebook. Let us know what those are, and you could win 5,000 shillings today. Senator,
yes,
that's tea. CT has the tea.
Okay.
There's ginger, there's lemon, there's tangawizi, there's black tea, there's purple tea. Have you ever had purple tea?
Yeah, of course, we grow bubble tea where I come from.
Even green tea. You know what I did yesterday?
But it's almost for international market. I only see when I travel.
Now imagine it is here in Kenya.
Beautiful.
The guys at Kiptagich are putting it available to the local market, as is tea. It's right here for you to have.
Beautiful.
And it's being packaged here, it's being produced here, it's on sale to the Kenyan market. The premium stuff that you will get in London, you're getting it here in Kenya.
Beautiful.
And City wants to give you some this
So he has been living a good life.
He has, and he wants to share that good life with you.
You could say that.
It will be exciting because we also build we also plant Nandi now, purple tea.
You see?
And it looks nice. Oh,
can you imagine?
We weren't telling you a story. We actually meant what we were saying.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much. This is nice, and it has all the combinations.
All the teas that we're talking about, you'll find them in there.
After testing, I'll buy and become a loyal client.
Precisely.
There you go.
And there are enough teas so that when a relative who is listening to you now comes to your house, you can also give him one packet to go home with.
In fact, I'm going to the meeting now from 9:30. I'll invite senators to my office because I'll just take direct to Parliament now.
Do you see?
And have. And I know they will purchase, but they'll not go away with this one.
No,
I'll just give them referrals.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Fantastic. 24 minutes to 8 o'clock. Kenya's biggest conversation continues right after this.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
When you're impeached, you're impeached. When you're sentenced, you're sentenced.
Madam Chief Justice.
Until the sentence is set aside. Ukibeba vitu kwa roho utakufa. If you carry things in your heart, you will die.
You've had the luxury of living for 50 years and you cannot still explain yourself. Surely. Oh my God.
The reason for which you went to school and then gathered experience, that reason must be paid for.
All right.
Okay.
This level.
Shape up or ship out.
Levels don't change.
No.
Since I'm not shipping up.
You know my business partner here.
Shipping out.
Are we talking about the sheep in the bathtub? Or
the sheep man?
Emmanuel Talabu used to tell us a story of they were in school and they've been told to write composition about a sheep. His classmate raises a hand. Teacher, are you talking about a sheep or a sheep goat?
The Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation.
cloudy conditions at 15 in Nairobi, highs of 22. We'll see highs of 25 in a sunny Nakuru. And at 16, it's cloudy in Nyeri, 18 and sunny in Eldoret, 26 and mostly cloudy in Mombasa, and cloudy at 26 in Malindi. It's 22 and cloudy in Kisumu, and 20 and mostly cloudy in Kakamega. At 20, it's cloudy in Kampala, and it's sunny at 28 in Dar es Salaam. 10 degrees and mostly cloudy in Johannesburg, and at 26, Lagos is cloudy, 24 and sunny in Kinshasa.
Spice up your life.
Okay, we're looking at heavy coming off of the Thika Superhighway still as you're getting out towards the junction that takes you to Wangari Maathai Way, or you're heading out towards Muranga Road, bumper to bumper all the way in from there. It's also heavy coming in from Muthaiga onto Kiambu Road and other sections. We're looking at in and outbound traffic on Waiyaki Way as well as James Gishuru. So we're going to look at some more traffic coming in. The Red Hill Link Road looks pretty good. There's an option for you to get into the city the longer way, but the quicker way from all that we can see. All right, so there's that ring coming in from Langata Road. It's also connecting on Raila Odinga Way. Heavy as you get towards the city's mortuary roundabout. Bumper to bumper in that area. Choose an alternate route if you don't want to get stuck. North Airport Road is looking all right about now. It's moving. It's crazy, but it's moving, and it's always a good thing when things are moving. Talk to us on Spice FM KE on Twitter, and let's do what? Keep things moving this morning.
Sugar and spice and everything nice. Spice FM.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right.
Nandi County Senator is our guest this morning, Samson Chiraga, and we're talking about the finance bill and what essentially needs to happen. Going into the break, Senator, we're saying even going after Generation Z folks who are trying to make sure that they create content that people can benefit from, or in one way or another, even them will go for them. And there seems to be alternate solutions to this. Why I mention the alternate solution is that is it the best way? And that question that I've asked, is it the way towards development? This taxation that we are seeing here, what happens the next time? Are we going to go higher than that? Will we go even higher than that still if it doesn't work? Because the truth of the matter, like you said, yes, even these new taxes that you want to into, or okay, they're not new taxes, they're an increment on taxes that already exist. You've already admitted that even that is not sufficient. It's not enough. So where are you going to go next? What about plugging the holes in corruption? We already know how much is missing, or how much goes missing that is unexplained for. Can the same zeal and fervor that is being used to tax Kenyans to within an inch of their lives be used to plug up the holes that have been created by corruption?
Thank you very much for that question. Is that you just a few minutes ago before we went for break, you said we need to expand the tax base. I know it sounds new because this is not a traditional taxation that we are used to, where I come to your shop, give you a permit, have a 8-year receipt, and you're paying VAT. You have to note that the country or the world is moving to a different way of doing business, and like digital content creators, the YouTube, the Facebook, even where they are domiciled, they pay a lot of taxes to their country. And therefore we are saying these digital content creators at certain level where you have viewership on YouTube and you can do ads, there is a way you earn. And therefore, I don't think there is a problem if we tax these digital content creators. And you remember there was a time that KRA was following our Instagram pictures. Say that when you are in Santorini, we need to check somewhere exclusive and exotic for holiday, Santorini somewhere. We need to know where you are getting the money. If you are driving, for example, Range Rover Vogue of 2023 or LC 300, where do you get the fund? So the main point is that these people are digital content creators. Some people might think they are tax evaders or they do business, but it is paying. And that is why government is now going for new areas of taxation. In fact, I'm looking to a possibility. You remember the Twitter verification blue? Kenyans were paying to get that blue mark. In fact, even myself and others who are able to, I'm not saying everybody was able to, but that is in form where we pay the money to, they must pay tax to that country. And therefore we are saying, okay, these young people, the Generation Z as you call it, they also they are doing something which is good. They keep us entertained online. In fact, most of the things have gone online nowadays. The ads have even been done online. When I will post that I have been given as his premium tiers is, it will somebody, you don't need to go traditional listen to the radio, or of course radio will outweigh many other things, but that online marketing will give opportunity to, there are people making money, but we must increase the base that you're doing. On the issue of corruption, I agree. And you remember there was a time the former US ambassador said that corruption in Kenya is budgeted, and he was approximating around 700 plus billion that was being used through corruption. And we have seen in this instances where the government officials put money somewhere, then they follow that money to where it is. But looking at the commitment of the president, you saw the KEMSA issue when the World Fund, is it Global Fund, sorry. Although I've looked at the history, I'm told we have been having a problems of corruption in KEMSA from 2 or 3. You have seen he has gone in, mop up and clean the KEMSA by ensuring procurement guys go, the CEO being suspended, the chair, although I believe the chair was just a few months old, to be fair. But I think the Mr. Irungu Nyakera, the new chairperson of KEMSA, will try and fix the mess. So there is already a goodwill by the president, and I can confirm to the nation, because we have told you pay tax. From the president where he sits, however mighty or high or close you are with the president, the president will deal with corruption, and he has promised, and he didn't say 90 days, he didn't say 6 months. You had an interview with him through your colleague Eric Latu. He said on this issue of Global Fund and KEMSA, I'm going to address it and fix it. Less than 24 hours, there were some changes, and I can confirm to you that most of these people who are working with government, they have been told that there is no room for corruption or laxity, because Kenyans pay painfully, have you said, tax. Yeah. It is also painful for a leader like me, my people to pay tax. Then that tax does not work for them because of corruption. And by the way, the president has shown goodwill. So let me confirm to Kenyans, because we have sat with the president a number of times, that anybody within government, however close or mighty you are, and you are caught up with corruption, the president has confirmed, even in our parliamentary group, he will be mercilessly dealing with you as an individual. And he has confirmed to the independent like EACC, DCI, he will never call any of those organizations that are tasked to fight corruption for any favor for anybody. And that is why the goodwill was just done through the KEMSA issue. So on the aspect of corruption, I can confirm to the country that the president does not have room for mercy. Mercy will only belong to the people who are receiving salvation, who want to go to heaven. But when it comes to corruption, he will deal with it firmly. And I know you have so many questions, that there are many. But we also allow the issue of the processes of investigation, the issue of litigation process, because the fact that the president, somebody say, why don't you sack them? The Employment Act is very stringent. You cannot just sack somebody. There are processes that you go through, and City is our senior here. He knows that before you fire somebody, there are processes that you under. Even in your organization like this, if you face a disciplinary action, you just start. So some people say, why did the president not fire them? Those people will go to court, and that is the option that the law has provided under Economics and Crimes Act of 2003 and revised after 2010, is that there is aspect of suspending. And in fact, you remember we wanted to amend the EACC Act to ensure that corruption cases are dealt within 2 years. And I was the chair, JLAC. I still believe, and I hope before the session of this year, hence I might, I'm looking at bringing those proposals so that we can amend. Because sometimes you had somebody has been arrested for corruption, 5 years, 6 years down the line, they are in court, they are acquitted, because either the witnesses are dead, the evidence
most recently there is lack of evidence. How many cases have we seen drop since December?
Yes,
for lack of evidence.
You know
what kind of confidence does that put in a system whereby you are now saying that corruption will be dealt with, and the majority of these cases have been corruption cases where money has either gone missing or there's a likelihood of fraud? But what have we seen is that the cases have been dropped.
And I agree with you.
Against what you're saying now, that corruption will be taken seriously.
My sister, the reason I'm always becoming a DJ. The reason The reason you see some of these cases were being dropped, as a lawyer, I'll tell you, some of those cases were politically motivated. Because in instances where those cases are provided hard proof, and where there is evidence, and that is why you saw my tweet the other day when they arrested Yesu wa Tongaren. Oh, it's far from us, it's the other side of Bungoma. I tweeted and I said, this aspect of using national emotions to do arrests, like Kamata Fridays, without police doing proper investigations and building a prima facie case, will always bring the end results where you go to court with a skeleton case. It does not meet the legal threshold. It is being thrown out. So the aspect, and that one does not also absolve the prosecutors. We expect the DPP, for example, Nurdin Aji, to ensure they are also thorough before taking somebody to court, because when you're taking somebody to court and you know economic crimes anywhere across the world is not easy to investigate.
So then how can
because
you convince
when you're looking
Kenyans,
for a voucher,
sure, I hear what you're saying, but then that could have happened in the last administration. It can happen in this administration. No. How are you going to convince Kenyan senator today that we're saying, okay, you guys, you pay this tax, okay? We're sealing up the holes of corruption to make sure that no money goes missing. We've seen cases being dropped because they were politically instigated and motivated, but we're saying none of that is going to happen in this administration. How are you going to convince folks of that?
Maybe I can start happening here. But you know, my sister, the issue is that there is already political goodwill, and I'm using KEMSA for example, because you know there is the part that the president can do, for example, is sacking and ensuring that cleaning up the system. There is a role of EACC, DCI. There is a role of courts.
Sacking doesn't clean up the system.
But of course, but I can confirm to you, if those people are found to have committed any economic crime and corruption,
cleaning up the system,
the EACC and DCI will take up it from there.
I agree, but cleaning up the system would make a lot more sense if we applied some of the tenets of Chapter 6, where people who are mentioned, you step aside, not sacked, because something seems to be wrong and your presence may interfere with the process of investigation that you've mentioned. You see, I understand the position that someone like you finds themselves in. I understand because you are part of the party that is now in power, and you inherited 1,001 things that you're finding you need to grapple with to make sense and to provide whatever it is you promised Kenyans. I understand all that. But I also understand that the situation we are in requires less words and more actions.
Correct.
So when you talk about what the president has said, it is a good precedence. But it has to be supported by more action, because if you're talking about cases of impropriety in this country, there are many. There are very, very, very many. And there are many that are in the making, simply because of the thinking of the people who hold positions of authority in this country. People want to make money. And usually it's at the expense of the citizen whom they're supposed to serve. Now, when we talk about what needs to be done and what is being done, don't you think that the citizens would perhaps pander more towards the president and the presidency if they saw KEMSA good, if they witnessed the very things that they consider germane to them being acted on? They saw. Right now, we are dominating our conversation with the taxes. There is no way taxes are a pleasant conversation. It does not matter what one says. No one wants to hear about taxes. But the actions would make it palatable, because you feel, we can see. My question, what do you think Kenya Kwanza is going to do to ensure that the things they have said, of the many things they have said, what are they going to prioritize to show Kenyans that they actually, their lives are changing? Not tell them, they've told us. What can we see that will guarantee that lives are changing for the better?
I agree entirely with what you're saying. Because at the end of the day, I agree. The aspect, the fact that Kenyans are paying tax, we need to see tax works, and I have said that before. Because you don't need to pay tax, and then when you get out here, the roads are not there, the service is not there, the public transport is not fixed. You need to pay tax to get value for that taxation. And one of the ways to ensure we address corruption, and that is why from the onset I say the president has shown goodwill by even starting with KEMSA. I know there is issue like sports fund, and you saw I had a mention on the floor of the house where sports fund has been misappropriated, where sports are being run through Harambes. You have seen our sportsmen and women getting stranded in hotel in fields, and you are told Kenyans for Kenyans, there is a pay bill, and yet there is a sports fund that has been dedicated to fund sports and growth talents.
Which receives money.
Which receives money.
Yes.
And the sports act has put. So I know there is corruption there. There are people who are misusing that money, moving to fuel subsidy at that point, moving for campaigns during the previous, during the campaign period. There is also the KQ where somebody is a CEO sits, he knows he can make losses, but being paid through bailout, there are different aspects of corruptions. Corruption is where I'm in an office, preside over an organization that makes losses, and then I use taxpayer to bail out. That's also corruption. That's the definition of another corruption. So I agree with you. There are 1,001 corruption allegations that were there. But I can confirm, and the president has said, and if you watch keenly, he has confirmed that in his administration, he will ensure that the independent institutions do their job and are well resourced. Then he will ensure, and that is why he has undertaken, when they were in retreat in Mount Kenya Safari Club, that anybody who, even if it is his friends or how close you are and the mighty you are, he will not become a refuge, or he will not allow anybody mention on the issue of corruption or allegations of it. The aspect you have mentioned about Chapter 6, and this is a conversation, because now, before a proof of either conviction under the law, and we accuse you, City Muga, that we just mention you over something, I don't think will be fair. Because if you are applying for a government job, and somebody mentioned you somewhere that you took a loan, you didn't pay back your loan.
It's my job to prove that I actually paid.
For example, you come, but we cannot use the mentions that somebody has unless we have a proof. For example, if we accuse you of an impropriety, you should be taken to court. If you are convicted, well and good, then you don't qualify to get a job. But if you are acquitted, then how can we deny you a job?
You're a lawyer, Mheshimiwa. I'm going to take you to something a little more interesting, like the Rome Statute, okay?
Yes.
Where the burden of proof, or the statute that puts the limit on what the burden is the threshold is high.
Yes.
When people are accused and you say you are party to some wrongdoing, one of the things that they require you to do is to show how it is you pushed back if you are in a position where you were ordered to do something and you participate in a wrong. Yes. They expect you to show evidence that you pushed back on that particular order.
Yes.
But simply saying you are ordered is inadequate.
Correct.
Now, why am I giving that as an example? People like yourself, learned friends who understand the law, understand these things that we're saying even better. The reason why impropriety has to be something that people avoid is when you know there are consequences for even being mentioned. But so long as, even when you're mentioned and the matter goes to court and you're still gung-ho about it and it's like nothing will happen, then we are killing the whole idea of accountability.
And ethics.
Yes, completely. So it stops making sense.
But under Chapter 6, and we have a law that has been passed, it is a dicey situation. Because where I believe, if you are not to hire anybody who has been mentioned, almost 40 million plus Kenyans would not be hired. Because in one way or another, somebody has been mentioned.
Okay. Even as we're coming to the top of this, Senator, then we've seen the reshuffle of PSs.
Yes.
We've seen essentially the people who run ministries.
Yes. They are the accounting officers.
Accounting officers. So are we seeing that as a sound bell from the president that's mirroring or reflecting what you're saying, that it's not business as usual anymore? With these 7 PSs, there more to come. What does this mean?
People who have engaged and stayed with President William Ruto knows is biased towards ensuring performance. And I advise these people, and I came on this show, that if you want to work under President William Ruto's government, and specifically President William Ruto, you must have picked the plan and the manifesto, studied it properly, understand how it works. I remember when the CBC presented their report in State House. Within 10 to 20 minutes, the president released them because he believed they had not performed very well. Even in Mount Kenya Safari Club, on some PSS tried to present. Even when we were in parliamentary group, some PSS came when we were in Naivasha, and they were stopped on their tracks because they were not presenting a realistic. So these individuals should study the manifesto and the plan of the president and know how President William works. There is no room for complacency. The underlying factor is performance. I can say you, going into the future, there are more heads that keep rolling to the highest level of CSS. Because now we are getting into real work. The fact that we are requesting Kenyans, are not saying we are pushing Kenyans to pay taxes, is those Kenyans will want the service to be top-notch. So the changes and heads that will keep rolling will go as high as CSS. Not only PSS.
Once something becomes law, it's no longer suggestion.
You don't have a choice, do you?
It's not as though you're being told.
But a good doctor will not tell you are dying. He will tell you we are managing some drugs and what have you. What I'm just saying, because you have asked a very important question, is that they will be changes. We are trying to. The president is trying to clean up system and get the people who believe in his. And more than 7 months, approve some of the PSS and CSS that they have the capacity to run. And also, you have to know,
so
we are still also
is committed to rooting out corruption and ensuring
efficiency.
That the monies that we pay as citizens of Kenya do the work that it is intended for.
I guess that's the nugget that we're going away with.
And that is why I'm saying the fact that the president heads will keep ruling even to the highest, and even head of departments in serious organization. And therefore, even we are still also cleaning up the government of Azimio remnants so that we have the correct people in those positions.
Senator Samson Cherage, Senator Nandi County, thank you for joining us this morning. The conversation continues, whether we like it or not. Thanks for being with us today. And again, soon. It's now 9 o'clock.
Has reversed the 12 billion shillings tender for the purchase of anti-mosquito nets to KEMSA just a day after President William Ruto made changes in the authority. The Global Fund, through the office of its partners in the country, has announced the tender in its plan to deal with malaria, AIDS and tuberculosis. The funds are scheduled to be used between July next year and June 2027. For over 21 years, Global Fund has been collaborating with various countries to address the 3 diseases that cause a number of deaths. Monday, President William Ruto fired Health PS Josephine Mburu, dissolved the board and appointed a new one immediately. Now, Singapore Prime Minister Lee Loong is in the country for a 2-day official visit. In his visit to the country, he is expected to meet President William Ruto for business roundtable with business delegations from the 2 countries. President Ruto will also host him to an official lunch. According to a communication from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Singapore, Prime Minister Lee is accompanied by several government officials. The bipartisan committee tasked with addressing issues affecting Kenyans has finally agreed on a framework on the nature of deliberations, ending weeks of push and pull on whether the talks should adopt a parliamentary, extra-parliamentary or executive order approach. After hours of deliberations, the committee unanimously agreed to have the talks anchored on parliamentary and extra-parliamentary framework, signaling the beginning of the bipartisan talks on issues raised by Kenya Kwanza and Azimio la Umoja. Azimio la Umoja coalition now wants the committee to prioritize issues affecting Kenyans in the next 30 days. Odinga also wants the committee to address electoral issues as well as political party discipline. The committee, which took a break to brief their respective coalition leaders on the progress, will today resume engagements. And farmers in Kisumu County accounting losses amounting to 320 million shillings after floods destroyed hundreds of acres of crops in the area. The crops among the maize, beans, sorghum, kales, rice and green grain grams was swept by floods, dimming the hopes of farmers who are looking forward to bumper harvests this season. According to a report by the County Department of Agriculture, Nyando is the most affected, followed by Lower Nyakach, lower parts of Muhoroni, Kisumu East and parts of Seme. In Nyando sub-county, where the floods displaced over 12,000 people after River Nyando broke its banks, farmers are yet to come to terms with the trail of destruction left behind by the disaster. At Ahero, farmers lost 500 acres of maize worth 18 million shillings, 400 acres of sorghum valued at 9 million shillings, 400 acres of beans worth 24 million shillings and 25 acres of rice valued at 900,000 shillings. And 1,511 bags of expired milk powder valued at over 75 million shillings have been impounded by police at a go-down in Nairobi. A statement from the Directorate of Criminal Investigations confirmed that the milk powder had been flagged at the port of Mombasa and was due for disposal since it had been declared unfit for consumption. DCI added that after raiding the premise, they found 25 kg bags with labels detailing the expiry dates removed and were ready for repackaging. The mind-bending question investigators from the DCI, the Economic and Commercial Crimes Unit, the Kenya Revenue Authority seek to unravel is how the consignment ended up at the godown despite it being uncustomed. And the 6th Parliament of the Pan-African Parliament has convened in Midrand, South Africa, and Kenya is represented by the parliamentarian delegation led by Tana River Senator Danson Mugatana. The 2-week second ordinary session to deliberate on togetherness for Africa under the 2023 theme accelerating the implementation of African Continental Free Trade Area will see delegates deliberate on what can jointly work for the common good of the African continent to promote universal growth by African countries. The 6th Pan-African Parliament, however, set aside 2 days to delve specifically on the climate change crisis affecting the states of the continent, how to manage and come out of the current unpredictable weather crisis and its effects. The 2 days set to tackle the climate change agenda is the 3rd Pan-African Parliamentarian Summit on Climate Policy and Equity, founded in 2009 in Nairobi, Kenya, to specifically be focusing on issues of climate change when the need arises. Further afield, and a US high school is facing criticism after it suspended a student for recording her teacher using a racial slur in school. Mary Walton filmed her teacher saying the N-word repeatedly on May 9th at Glendale High School in Springfield, Missouri. Her family has since retained a lawyer and asked the school to apologize. School officials say they believe the student was disciplined appropriately. The teacher who used the slur has quit. This is Newswire. Dennis Aseto. Good morning.
.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
All right, so we're still looking at traffic and build-up in different parts of the city this morning. It's still heavy coming off the Thika Superhighway, and we're going to see that for some time as you're coming into the CBD. We're looking at traffic on Langata Road today, and it's seeping on to Raila Odinga Way a little bit there as you're getting to the roundabout just around the city mortuary. Traffic situation on the Thika Superhighway, then coming in through towards the Pangani Underpass, spilling over to Moranga Road. That still looks pretty busy right about now, and Limuru Road still continues to give in terms of traffic this morning. Waiaki, we're not looking too bad, but the spillover from James Gishuru is going to take us some time as you get out of that traffic just over the drift and through to the CBD. Where are you this morning? Traffic hasn't been too terrible. Hopefully we can keep it just so. Let's talk on Spice FM KE on Twitter and keep things moving this morning.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latin, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
7 minutes after 9 o'clock. Continues Kenya's biggest conversation, continues into the final hour of Kenya's biggest conversation, and we're still on the finance bill this morning, even after that session with Senator, and we are still talking about including people in conversations, and we're looking at a certain sector, a certain category of the population this morning, and our guest to join us in that conversation is already here and seated, and we'll introduce her in a minute. Before we do that, let's kick off this hour with today's proverb from Eritrea.
Yes. The whole of this week are proverbs from the country of Eritrea, a country that was once a kingdom. Amazing how time and the passage of it changes things. A liar sweats twice as much as an honest man.
A liar sweats twice as much as an honest man. Some truth in that. Acheng Akomo is the Regional Director, Planned Parenthood Global Africa, and she's our guest this hour. Acheng, good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. Karibu sana.
Thank you very much.
Welcome to Kenya's biggest conversation.
I'm excited.
You're glistening in that awesomely gorgeous outfit in the hot seat.
That's why I wore it, right? I can distract the conversation, right? Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you, Asante Sana.
What do you think about that proverb, even as we start off this morning?
I love it. I love that you start with a proverb. And yes, it's true. There's truth in that, right? Because when you're dishonest, you're not comfortable. And, you know, your body malfunctions, so to speak, right? So you're over sweating.
Yeah.
You know, so I truly believe, you know, in Proverbs, the Proverbs speak truth.
Indeed. They do.
Amen.
Amen.
Amen. and as far as Eritrea, like you said, a kingdom, also, you know, the home of the, you know, Alexander Pushkin. I was just reading some of his poetry last night because, you know, I love history and docudramas.
Yeah.
And there was something that caught my attention. And I recall that a friend of mine had told me that there's a statue of Pushkin, his grandfather, that he came from Eritrea, because you know they just say he came from Africa. You know, there's never the
you know, it's one country
given. Exactly.
We can also settle you down with a cup of, you know, Kenya's premium tea, Kiptagich Tea Estates are manufacturing this absolutely gorgeous tea. And like I said, I was having a bit of a throat thing yesterday. So I combined the lemon and the ginger tea, and it was fantastic.
Lovely.
They've got purple tea, they've got green tea, they've got ginger tea, tangawizi, they've got lemon tea, and it's premium tea. It's not your dust. It's the stuff that will go for export. But you know what they're doing? They're having the variants of this tea. They're selling it on the Kenyan market. And they're saying you don't have to take the tea, kick it out, bring it back, and then sell it for huge, you know, crazy prices. But they're carrying that whole value-added process out right here on the plains of Bomet in Kenya.
Beautiful.
Assis tea is fantastic stuff. You should try it.
I love our tea. I only drink Kenyan tea. All my years abroad, I only drink Kenyan tea.
And these guys are offering it, you know, in different variants, and are saying premium that is good enough for the world.
Amen.
Better for Kenya.
Wonderful.
It's great. Karibu sana to the conversation this morning, and the finance bill is still front and center of conversations. And beyond that, in terms of participation when it comes to putting some of these things into law. Let's start with Planned Parenthood first of all. As you're the regional director for Africa, what does Planned Parenthood do?
Okay, so Planned Parenthood Global is the international arm of Planned Parenthood Federation of America. Okay, we're not IPPF. Some people get confused us with International Planned Parenthood Federation. What do? We work through partners, okay, in 5 countries currently, under the framework of the Maputo Protocol Action Plan, Article 14, Section 2C. There, that beautiful document encompasses all of women's rights, okay, socioeconomic, cultural, etc. But Article 14 is reproductive rights. So we support partners that have a need and interest in a particular aspect of reproductive health rights. We don't dictate the agenda. They've come to us, and so it's the gamut. It can be HIV, AIDS, FGM, child marriage, whatever impacts reproductive health rights of girls. Our particular focus are young people, okay? We've recognized the huge gap and the lack of attention paid to young people's needs so that they understand the responsibilities, right, of parenthood, or they lack access to information to prevent unintended pregnancies, or get STDs, etc., so that they're not now planning for their futures. So in a generic sense, that's what we do. So there's the advocacy support for policies, right? Positive policies. You talked about the finance bill coming out. Most of the countries we work in, yes, young people need to know what's in that bill. What should they be advocating for if it's not there? Then there's also the service delivery that we used to do, but we no longer do. However, what we've changed in our new strategy is training providers to be advocates, okay? Youth-friendly services, okay? Because again, the stigma associated with young people trying to access information and services. So that's the second bucket. The third is innovation, okay? So that, all the different innovation, young people are, have the aspirations and they're very, should we call it creative? And so how do we inspire that innovation? Right, so that they can live healthy lives. This is about healthy lives so that they can be honorable citizens and contribute to their country.
Absolutely. I mean, put like that, then you're talking about making life livable for a subset of people. After life is livable, then you can then contribute to your society or your community.
And your family. Okay, what about the unmet needs of family? I forgot to mention, so we currently Planned Parenthood Global Africa. I'm the Africa Regional Director. We also are based in Latin America and Africa. For Africa, we're working in Senegal, Burkina Faso, Benin, Kenya, and Uganda. We used to work in Nigeria. We had some programs in Ethiopia and other parts of the continent, but again, that was based on funding, etc.
As a layperson, when I hear the word Planned Parenthood, all sorts of things go through my mind. So I have to ask, what does Planned Parenthood look like? And of course, I'm going to ask you, what does Unplanned Parenthood look like?
Correct. Well, we know what Unplanned Parenthood looks like, right? The numbers are there. The maternal morbidity rates, right? The deaths from harmful practices, etc. So Planned Parenthood is about equipping young people, girls, with information, accurate information. There's a lot of misinformation out there. Young people are on technology and they're being misinformed. So what we try to do is create those platforms where they can access accurate information. So it's about access to accurate information so you can plan for your future. Okay, so it's about access to services. Youth-friendly services, right? Because young people are, they don't know where to go for information. Parents, we know we in Africa we're a conservative society. Okay, we've got part of it is we work also with parents in certain parts of West Africa where the social cultural norms are heavily influence the values, okay, of young people, and so it's like, okay, parents, in order for your children to live healthy lives, right, they need the information and the services. This is not just about promotion of careless sex. No, it's about if you're going to have sex, you need to be responsible, okay, and understand the consequences. And that's the goal of our program, to make sure that young people are equipped with information and then know where to find services if they're in trouble or if they intend to have families. Then these are the services that should be available to you. If not, that's where our advocacy would kick in, and looking towards the policy reform. We work at all levels. We do not work in our countries, in the capital cities, like in Burkina Faso, we're beyond the environs of Ouagadougou.
Yes.
We're in the communities where the needs are of the marginalized. So again, working with the social, cultural, traditional practices. We work with the chiefs in those West African countries that are Muslim majority, okay, because we understand you can't make that penetration. So, sir, unplanned parenthood, it has caused problems for young people, unemployment, okay, they're on welfare, because, you have the high number of school dropouts. You have, again, they're not equipped, so they are now in the marginalized sector of work, the grey markets, or criminal enterprise. And what we've seen in other parts of the continent, because I worked there most of my life, is jihadism, this attraction, okay? Then you've got the rapes, right? The unintended pregnancy. What happens with those children? What happens to those women? And even the young boys. Even the young boys. Let's not forget the young men that now have been, indoctrinated. I'm very saddened by what I see happening in Sudan, South Sudan. That's a country I'd worked on, and it's been continued. In fact, even many countries, there's just been continuous conflict. I remember in Liberia, the young people I worked with never knew peace. In fact, they don't even know what democracy till this day. That was a conversation I was having with a young person. They don't understand what it is to live and work in a democracy because of this continuous conflict, the ebbs and flow of it. So that's where now the unplanned parenthood comes in those types of situations where young people are not equipped with information and don't know where to access accurate information or the services.
So for your work to be effective, it means therefore that you work with other partners.
With
other partners?
Of course, yes. We work through partners. We just provide the technical assistance and the funding, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
You see, because when you talk about reproductive health, and the understanding, the ways and tools of it. See, what comes to my mind is the direct correlation between what we're now referring to as unplanned parenthood or planned parenthood and the understanding that the parents would have. Because if you have parents who are inadequately informed, they will bring up their children the turmoils of insurrection and the turmoils of civil wars notwithstanding.
Correct.
But you'll have a situation where these young people are growing up in an ecosystem where to begin with, there's inadequate information. Now, if you provide them with information, there's a likelihood that they will probably have more information than their parents do.
Well, we ensure that our programs, where they're taught in school, like where we work with partners pushing comprehensive sex education, there ought to be a parental accompanying program, right? I don't say PTA, but you also have to bring in the teachers, the educators, etc. So no, we don't just focus on the children; we focus on the parents too. Particularly in West Africa, I think we've just started the work here in Kenya through our youth engagement. Again, it's for the partners and the young people to tell us. We do conduct. I don't want to call it an opinion poll. Let's call it an assessment, rigorous survey to ask parents, right, and teachers and adults, okay, how do you talk to young people about these issues as they come up? And so that informs the discourse and perhaps the training, the exchange of information. So yes, the young people, yes, because they're these are technological based. We go to where the young people are.
Right.
So we use technology, okay, because we recognize that, okay, those are the platforms that they use, and that's how we have to make it exciting. However, we do recognize the need for adult, should we say, interaction and information, and most certainly including the parents. We can't work in many of these communities without including not just the parents, the traditional leaders, religious leaders, etc. So and when I say traditional, I mean cultural chieftaincies.
One would assume that in different communities there's a different issue that requires this kind of advocacy.
Correct.
The issue that you're dealing with in South Sudan, for example, is not the same issue that you're going to deal with in Burkina Faso.
Correct.
In Kenya, it's a totally different issue.
Yes.
So then how then do you use these tools to make sure that young people are interacting interacting with the information?
Yes. We are, again, using the technology so that they can talk to each other. There are various technological platforms that we are in the process of creating, because we recognize you cannot do youth movement in one country alone on this continent and looking to expand throughout the world. So yes, they talk to each other. We make it a point through our youth leaders. We work through regional organizations, like in West Africa is the Ouagadougou Partnership for the Francophone countries. In this part of the world, we're looking to the East African community, the youth parliamentarians, and all those infrastructures that are in place, but really in looking for that collaboration and ensuring that our platforms that we build, we've got the Facebook page. I can't remember all of them, but I do recall the Facebook and of course the Twitter and the Instagram, where these young people are talking to each other. They're doing it already, right? Music, fashion, etc. So what we endeavor to do is to really create space on those different platforms. But we have created our own platform, and my colleague, I'll share the Twitter handles and everything a little later. And the idea is that now that we're on this side of the continent, we're bringing all those best lessons, those practices, to bear. Yeah.
So there's a big conversation that's being had in Kenya right now, and many would argue that of all the bills that have been, brought up in the recent past, and maybe recent past could go to 5 years, that this one currently has attracted the most interaction. And I'd be interested to know, are young people involved in this interaction as concerns then livelihoods, taxes, involvement in what I like to call participatory governance? Do we see that there is that heavy interaction with the other subject areas that we talked about? And then if not, how then do we start to bring people into being part of your own governance? Exactly.
It's really important. And I know that, during election time, I used to work with the NDI, we doing electoral governance, and particularly trying to attract young people to understand the need to vote. Otherwise, you can't exercise your right. Okay, then you don't, then that accountability mechanism is not there. So it starts with, for young people, understanding that, yes, your government has made these commitments, okay, and what do they mean to you? Okay, if they mean something to you, then you need to understand the commitments, your rights, and how to exercise your rights constructively and engage, okay? And engage in a constructive manner, okay? So that you can achieve your goal. So so there are trainings that we provide through partners. Again, we work with a number of human rights organizations across all these countries. In Kenya, it's the Kenya Human Rights Council. And the idea is to demonstrate to young people how to exercise their rights, not just sloganeering that this is my right, but how do you unpack it and exercise it? And now you've got this bill and policy. You want to hold your leadership accountable. What does that mean? How do you do it? What are the mechanisms, etc.? So that's really important. And budgeting is really key. When I worked in Southern Africa years ago, that was the number one project that I worked on with young people. I forget the name of the project, but it was about budgeting and young people understanding the national budget, the key articles that pertained to their future. Okay, it's not just education, but of course the health, etc. Not all that money being necessarily put in youth and sports, which is important. Don't get me wrong. However, you need to know what particular aspects will affect your life, right? And so that's part of our planning, right? Putting the planning in Planned Parenthood. Understand, your destiny, and how are you going to control your destiny if you don't understand all these policies? Okay, including the budget. Okay, that's but one. And then the key thing that we have really been pushing these past 2 years under our new strategy is the intersectionality. Okay, too many governments just put health siloed. Okay, it's over there. No, it intersects all aspects of governance. Okay, you cannot grow your economy if you don't have healthy people. I've worked in Eastern Europe where I've seen young boys and girls with babies dying across the Mediterranean, okay, or washed up and then walking across Europe to get to wherever. Okay, that's an issue. That's something that is in the budget, right? You know, employment. When we talk about employment, what does that mean to you as a young person? Okay, you know, so, and how do you engage, right? How do you find those employment opportunities or the education to equip you for those employment opportunities? Yeah.
Do we find, I mean, just looking at the work that's been done, because we're trying to localize this conversation in terms of what's happening here.
Yes.
But then just going a little bit broader, do we find that if you have, because we know that young people today make up the majority percentage of population.
Oh, yes, they do.
Okay, 70%.
Yes.
This is, it's on the continent, it's around the world.
Yes.
Except in some where you have an extremely older population and a very, very young population.
Yes.
Do we find that young people being more equipped by knowledge then lay an impact on the decisions that are made at a government level? Is that a case that has been established? Has it been seen somewhere to make a case for being involved?
Yes.
Because we also know that the world has changed in the sense that we're looking for a microwave solution. So if something does not produce a result, the likelihood of somebody being involved in it reduces significantly. So do we find that young people being more knowledgeable, being more engaged in communities and societies, then translates,
of course,
to better or more inclusive governance?
Exactly, and you know, and amplifies their voice, right? You know, it's really exciting that there's that section in the budget. You know, I had an opportunity to glance at it yesterday. So empowerment, as we know, is key. I mean, for every walk of life, and in particular young people, being we used to, my generation, we call it youth bulge. Okay, I understand that's not the politically correct term anymore. But you know, the idea again, yes, of course, armed with knowledge, information. I mean, that's how all of us got where we were, right? You know, you gain the experiences, and they have to know what they need to do to promote a healthy future. Okay, it's not a one-way street. It's not a top-down approach. There's need for that bottom up. Young people have their needs and aspirations. I mean, if you read the background of the Maputo Protocol, right, the documents that brought it into being, I mean, there was a lot of conversation about young people's aspirations and needs, given the conflicts across this continent. Kenya is primed. I mean, Kenya is a middle-income country. I did my education in this country, and from my primary school, secondary, I was in Ghana, right, as an African, able to go to the US and succeed, right? So the standards have slipped, okay? They have slipped, okay? And there's not enough investment made, not just in education, but health. Okay, health. COVID was an eye-opener for all of us as far as that goes. And so now young people, instead of sitting back and being quiet, okay, how do you seize this opportunity to amplify your voice, make your needs known, and work constructively through the mechanisms that are available? If that's what the government has said in this budget, these are the opportunities, then how do you innovate and create space so that those other needs are met, and to do it in a constructive, you know, yet disruptive way, no longer just accepting the status quo. I mean, young people are doing this. We've seen this protests, right, across the continent, not just in Kenya, you know, demanding economic rights, okay? But, you know, parts of that is you have to be healthy, and part of that, we argue, part of planning is, you know, the family planning. Yes.
Indeed. Let's take a break at 9:30 as we continue this conversation in terms of how then can young people be involved with the conversations that are happening at a national level today. And let's see if you're wondering, are you wondering at the moment or imagining a place where you would have guaranteed water and electricity 24/7? 365 days a year? Have you ever wondered what options are available for you based on your current rent, or how you can use the current rent amount as an installment towards ownership? Imagine paying rent for over 10 years and at the end of it, you have nothing to show for it. How about you pay mortgage knowing that at the end of a given period, you will not only have enjoyed and lived in your home, but guess what? You will own it. Centum saying you can have an opportunity to do this. Walk into any bank today, ask them about the Kenya Mortgage Refinance Company home-backed loan. They should be able to give you information on it, and an interest of between 8 to 9% per year. that you can take advantage of for a maximum period of 25 years. Have access to 1-2 bedrooms next to 2 rivers, play area for your children, next to school, next to health facilities, next to all these other amenities, and you can do that while you pay rent to own a home. The road to home ownership starts with that. It's 28 minutes to 9 o'clock. Back after this.
If you go out of this country and come back the same person, then you have a problem. Buy land, 1 million. Put it there for 5 years. What's the purpose?
It'll have increased in value.
No, that's the thing. That's darkness. That's an eclipse. You don't do that.
I hope you don't believe that hustler is a poor person or that all hustlers are poor. I've seen that conversation.
Tell us, who is a hustler?
Who is a hustler? Hustler is a person who is making a living through hard work.
Corruption in Kenya is a political accusation. The people who are actually corrupt are not pointed fingers at.
Kenya is not free. Kenya imeshikwa na mateka. It's under siege.
Have you seen that lodge on Nyeri Road? Very high fence. You can't even
Windows
sleep inside.
up near the ceiling.
Yes. And if you walk there at midnight, you see bats the size of cows.
And when it rains, it doesn't rain on that building.
Yes.
When you're at All Saints.
Close your eyes. Imagine your unsecured personal loan application has been approved. Imagine all the things you can do and buy. Imagine all the life goals you can achieve. Now stop imagining. Talk to your employer to switch to I&M at Work and get access to Kenya's largest unsecured personal loan of up to 10 million shillings. Call 0719 088 000 today. I&M. Tunakujali.
Business News, brought to you by I&M Bank. Get Kenya's largest unsecured personal loan of up to 10 million Kenya shillings from I&M Bank Kenya. Business News is sponsored by I&M Bank. Are you an employer in Kenya? Switch to I&M at Work today and sign up your employees to Kenya's largest unsecured personal loan today. Call 0719 088 000 today. I&M, tunakujali.
18 and mostly cloudy conditions in Nairobi, highs of 22 and lows of 15. And at 19, it's sunny in Nakuru, highs of 25. We'll see highs of 23 and a mostly cloudy Nyeri at 18. And at 20, it's sunny in Eldoret, highs of 25 and lows of 14. Cloudy at 27. In Mombasa, highs of 30 and lows of 25. And Malindi is cloudy at 28, going to highs of 30. It's mostly sunny at 24 in Kisumu, highs of 30. And we'll see highs of 28 in a sunny Kakamega at 23. Cloudy at 23 in Kampala, highs of 28. And it'll go to highs of 30 in Dar es Salaam, where it's cloudy at 29. Johannesburg is cloudy at 10, highs of 19. And we'll see highs of 32 in a sunny Lagos at 26. At 25, Kinshasa is sunny, highs of 32. Looking into a mostly cloudy Beijing Wednesday afternoon, we'll see highs of 27 and lows of 15. And it's sunny at 9 in Paris and sunny at 10 in London. Mostly cloudy at 19 in New York, still Tuesday night. Coming into Wednesday, we'll see highs of 20 and lows of 8.
Welcome to Spice FM, the best exclusive radio station bringing you the best mix of the best music ever.
All right, still looking at traffic this morning, not too crazy in most parts of the city. We're just looking at it heavy coming off of Kiambu Road. It's still going to continue for some time as you then come in and join going towards Wangari Maathai or out towards Murang'a Road this morning. Regardless which way you're going, you're going to get stuck at some point just at that nook coming in from the Pangani underpass. All right, Ring Road Westlands, a little bit of traffic still left here and there. On James Gishuru, still continues just past the drift, but you should be okay after that getting onto Waiaki Way. Most parts of the city have more than cleared up now, so yay. Mombasa Road looks pretty good as you're heading out towards the CBD. Just a little bit of a hold up right around Haile Selassie. So let's keep an eye on things and see what happens after that. Spice FM KE on Twitter.
Business News with Spice FM.
I'm Dennis Aseto. Nairobi is the only city in Africa that made the top 45 global cities that posted growth in the last year, ranking 32nd. Kenya's capital posted a 3.5% change in growth in the period from 2021 first quarter to 2022 first quarter. The city recorded a 2.4% change in 6 months from Q3 2021 to Q1 2022 and a 1.3% change between Q4 2021 and Q1 2022. As tourism continues to witness recovery following the easing of COVID-19 containment measures, local hotel chain Pride Inn Group of Hotels has embarked on an expansion plan as it seeks to set operations in all the 47 counties. The group has acquired a new camp, Pride Inn Azure Luxury Mara Camp, taking a pie of the game reserve whose popularity has risen over time and currently hosts up to 2,700 per day during the high season. And East African Brewers Limited has appointed Joy Mishira as the Marketing and Innovation Director for East Africa. Prior to the announcement, Mishira was the head of marketing BA for EABL and was pivotal in building and growing some of East Africa's biggest brands, making it one of the Ageo's biggest beer business. Now, the head of Twitter has hit back after Elon Musk said his $44 billion deal to buy the platform was on hold while he saw details about fake accounts. In a series of tweets, Parag Agrawal defended the firm's estimates that spam accounts were less than 5% of users. Musk responded with a poo emoji, later repeating his claim that Twitter was underestimating the figure. Analysts have speculated that Musk may be looking for ways to renegotiate the price of the deal or walk away. For Spice Business, I'm Dennis Aseto.
Spice FM Business. Chilled Spice.
.22 going towards 10 o'clock, Kenya's biggest conversation into the last 22 minutes of our show today. And as we are looking at issues, discussing important issues when it comes to youth and participation, one of those being the finance bill, and saying, all right, how are these advocacy conversations taking place to make sure that young people are actually involved? As we look at issues around the world, Arab Spring, for example, I look at the issues in Egypt that essentially started with somebody who was 24 years old and said, you know what, I'm invested in this conversation. The leadership cannot continue to do this at our expense. But this was somebody who clearly understood and was participating. And I guess the question is, how then do you move from being able to harp about things on social media as opposed to then getting actually involved? Like if we did a poll today, how many young people are involved in the public, call it whatever you want to call it, but how many young people are involved in public participation when it comes to how it affects their lives? Meanwhile, one of the big things in this bill affects young people. One of the big things is that the tax man is going to come for you.
Correct.
For some of the content that you're creating, which is creating an income for a lot of young people in Kenya today.
Correct.
So if you're not involved in the conversation, how are you then asking for certain things to be done?
May I add to your question? It's like the government has looked at the numbers and they've realized that there's a population in this country that we refer to as young people, and there are many. And since there are many, there's work that many of them tend to do that perhaps we haven't captured adequately. So let's cast this tax net wider and see how we can capture them. Now, we have a public participation understanding about these matters. Now, for young people to participate effectively in this, how does an organization such as the one you work for ensure that this empowerment you speak of actually puts them in that pivotal position, because they are big players?
Correct.
Very, very big players.
Correct.
How does the weight of their numbers reflect in their participation?
So let me say what we have done, right, in other countries, not Kenya, in Senegal and Burkina, is we have policymakers as champions. In fact, that's what took us into Benin. I mentioned that we just recently started working in Benin. We have policymakers that have heard of the organization's partnership model and have asked us to come in and help move the agenda. And to answer your earlier question, we've been in business 50 years in Latin America and in Africa, Planned Parenthood Global. And primarily it was we were asked to come and help promote the policy, formulation around, reproductive health, right? And again, the beautiful document Maputo Protocol was there, and so there's just need to actually domesticate it in the countries that we work in, and that was the entry point. Again, that entry point, right? That domestication requires the policymakers. Okay, that's not an exercise civil society can do on its own. The advocacy aspects of it are there, but then you also find your policy champions, and that's where the conversation starts, right? Because the policymakers now we create those safe spaces where those conversations can be held, the needs are articulated, and then also that engagement is facilitated so that young people understand in order to get this seat at the table, you need to come equipped, right, with your information, your rationale, proper rationale, and also to showcase the results of, the data speaks for itself in terms of, the criminal enterprise, the lack of employment, the high school dropouts, the unintended pregnancies, the welfare, increased welfare. And so in order for, as the gentleman has said, to capture this population, the politicians have understood their role, but young people also need to understand their role. And that's where the training and the educational programs we provide through our partners come in, so that they're armed, equipped, because in Senegal and in Burkina and we're just recent, and in Kenya too, we've had partners. RHNK was one of our organizations, Reproductive Health Network of Kenya, that we founded. So the training and educational programs are there to engage the policymakers, but to be the experts, right? You bring in the experts, right, that can speak to the issues and make those linkages. This is where that intersectionality. So it's not just seen as a health issue. This is a socio-economic issue. If you're going to grow your economy, like you've said, you've got this youth bulge, you've got 42% of your population on this continent under the age of 24, they're going to grow up, right? So if you want a tax base, right, then they need to be legitimately employed, not following the criminal enterprise way or trying to just stay in that gray market area, so to speak. So all that needs to be part of the education process and training. There are many trainings available, some online, some whatever, and it's a worthwhile investment. This is where the government ought to invest and continue to educate its young people so that, again, they can plan their future and their destinies so that they can be citizens and understand the need to contribute, why there's nothing wrong with paying taxes. Okay, it's an education process to understand taxes. You were talking earlier about mortgages, owning, renting for 10 years and whatever. Yeah, that's something that, you're taught, right? Before you purchase a property, you go through some sort of counseling session to understand what it is, right, supposedly to own versus renting, etc. So it's the same thing with young people about their responsibilities and engaging constructively on the budget, understanding that if you didn't vote, then you've got a problem. But if you voted and you've got a representative, a senator, a local council person, how are you going to engage them to meet your needs? Yeah.
Oftentimes, we, again, looking for solutions, whose ultimate responsibility is it to make sure that young people are engaged in the conversation? I think, what do we say in Africa? It takes a village, right? So it's a village. There are many actors, okay? Not just the parents, right? It's your culture, the so-called leadership. Depends on who you consider leadership. So, it's not just relegated to one person. And then there's also a responsibility on the young person to educate themselves, empower themselves, right? So that they can constructively engage. So successes, you asked that question, are where young people are engaging with their county leaders, their chiefs, their religious leaders. They've been able to win them over to understand why access to reproductive health information and services is important for the community, okay, whatever the community.
I think you've worked all over the globe. Do you have examples of places where the training and the interfacing participation that your organization has had with young people has resulted in young people being an integral part of the decision-making process in communities?
I honestly want to say Burkina Faso. Yes.
Walk us through. Tell us what happened and how exactly
that's where our Billy Now, our youth engagement program started. And there again, it was about, a state of hopelessness that young people were in, and they just wanted, they're looking for a better life, right? They're looking for improvement, but yet the statistics were off the charts in terms of unintended pregnancies, etc., lack of access to youth services. So again, at the time, the political, the political ecosystem was very friendly and open to that conversation, because the alternate was jihadism. Okay, so that education, training, and the activities that were launched by young people themselves, and particularly young men, okay, that wanted opportunity. They didn't want to migrate. They want to stay in their country. And so they saw this as an education program. Now, I'm not going to lie. Employment was their top criteria. Okay, is this going to lead to employment? How? Because, that's the priority of young people across this continent. Yeah, their health matters. However, it's not their priority. So we've had success in Burkina because the young people are at the table. They have influenced and integrated language into the policy, into the national accelerated family planning policy in Burkina Faso, and that has been our young people with our training, with the champions. Okay, we didn't do this alone. Again, like I said, we've got advocates. We've held intergenerational dialogues. That's another successful thing. The first ever that were held in Burkina Faso were motivated and implemented by these young people. We just supported and provided the technical assistance, and of course, at each of these functions or activities, we invite the policymakers, you invite the politicians, you invite the religious and customary leaders. That's a country where the Association of Muslim Religious Leaders are part of the program. They're one of the partners that we work with, and we're seeking to do the same here in Kenya. At the coast, I apologize, I can't remember the name of our partner right now, but we've stood up an initiative in Kenya where working multifaceted angles so that young people have voice through all the different levels, because it's not enough to just say you're going to deal with the policy.
Yeah, which was another question that I had, because if you look at schooling and you look at the age of socialization, we were starting as young as 3 years old, right?
Yes.
In terms of then the concretization of beliefs and things like that.
Yes.
Where does education play a role in participatory governance later? Because we're saying you're interested in the things that are going to make your life better, isn't it? As a young person.
Correct.
So I'm still coming back to this finance bill here, because it plays on so many parts of life. And right now, I don't know that we can say that young people are engaging to make sure that their views are heard when it comes to this one bill that could affect so much of what they do.
Yes.
But I'm also imagining a situation whereby if at grade school level, they started to be taught about the importance of being involved in what your government does at a later time in life.
Yes.
Where would we be?
It's called civic education. We used to have it, I believe, and I just think that just needs to be strengthened and modernized to today's world. Okay, what it means, again, to vote, right? That's the first step, right? When you become of age and now you're getting ready to vote, okay, what does that mean? Okay, and that with the responsibilities of being a voter, voting a particular person into office, right? What's that relationship look like? What are the demands you can make, etc.? So yes, of course, it should be taught in school. For every walk of life, there's preparation, training, education, and why not on reproductive health? Okay, and so it should start there. In Uganda, that's the project that the partners, the program that we've supported for years is comprehensive sex education in schools because of the high number of dropouts and everything that was happening, teachers defilement, etc. And so education is really key. However, again, we work where the needs are, where our partners identify the gaps. So, that's not something that, of course, we work in Kenya, but here it's about the youth, getting youth to equipped so that they are employable and they're good citizens. And of course, that will require a lot of civic education, working through CSO, rights-based organizations, to talk about sustainable development. Okay, what does that mean? SDGs are out there. Can we go and ask young people, okay, what are the SDGs that matter to you? These are things that, should be taught, right? Because, with all the issues of climate change, right? Now climate change is a curricula now. Yeah. But, the health, that matters so much, HIV, be it, name it, STDs, etc. Young people ought to know, okay, you engage in this. This is what happens to you. Where are you getting the money? Where are you getting the services? If there are no government services, can you afford private services? So it matters because this is about planning your life and your livelihood. You need to know how you're going to do it, unless, you're a trust fund child. And even then, that access is really important, and that information, that adequate, and knowing where to get the information, right? This bill requires a lot of unpacking. Okay, so I saw the section on youth agenda empowerment. Okay, now we need to go with our people, unpack this so that we can say, young people, okay, this is what your government has said. Okay, this is what is being offered under various youth sports, whatever this, that. And how do you, as a young person, constructively engage with your policymaker? Not necessarily so that you are invited to the table. And this is what happened in our other programs, is our young people were invited to the table. And when, like when going to Geneva for the periodic reviews on human rights, there's a section for young people. And in Senegal, in particular, the parliamentary and different policymakers that we work with ask for what have been the successes so that they can include it in the report. So it starts like that.
How do you work with governments?
We work
or government agencies or government departments or government ministries?
We have to cultivate that relationship. We need that buy-in. Okay, we recognize that we can't move and be successful if we don't, try to cultivate a partnership to co-create this space. Okay, so we're not trying to do it on our own. So in each of the countries, again, looking for champions, and it doesn't necessarily mean at the top level. In Kenya, I believe it's at the county level that the colleagues have been working for a number of years under our program that was called Closing the Gap. Which was successful 8-year program, and there the services were provided, youth access to friendly services in 4 parts of the country. So we make it a point to make sure that government is aware, and we want to collaborate, if not partner.
How then do you ensure that you don't duplicate what other agencies that may claim to do what you're doing also do?
Or even government itself.
Yeah, luckily I come from an international agency background, USAID, so I know about this scanning the ecosystem and talk to everybody and make sure that we're not trying to duplicate efforts, and we rigorously try to ensure that our partners too are not double dipping, and so that which we know is difficult, this development arena. However, we try to work on an integrity basis and make sure that we talk to everybody. That's part of the conversation. We're going to now in Kenya really increase our power to convene all the different partners working in this sector, so that we continue to talk to each other.
If you looked at your crystal ball and what has been happening in Kenya recently, what is likely to happen in terms of engagement with young people here today, with the knowledge, limited or not as it may be, what is likely to happen with this bill in terms of youth engagement?
I think young people's eyes are opened, right? I think this series of the need for empowerment, economic empowerment, I think is really key. I mean, look, the world is facing a recession. I think you asked for examples, right? I'm happy to say that the best examples for our work, I didn't answer your question earlier, have been coming from Africa and not necessarily the US. You see what's happening in the US. It's not really happening, but the best examples have really come out of Africa as far as our work is concerned. But as far as Kenya, look, we're excited that youth want to be empowered. They want a different direction. The training programs that one of our partners is organizing, we're working, and also our lens too, working with one of our partners, NILAB, is the commerce, right? Looking at enterprise, innovation. So that has got young people excited and understanding that they need to equip themselves and skill themselves. This budget is very key given the recession. It's a global recession. What does that mean for all of us? Okay, we have to pay attention. And so I think it's again, that's a key message for us, okay, because it's all about money, right? Because you can't do anything unless you understand how to manage your money and your relationships, okay? So that's really key in order to advance youth movement, right? And that's what we're trying to do, is build a youth movement. So in order to do the two, you must be armed with the accurate information. You must know how to constructively engage with the policymakers. And when I say constructive, I mean you come with your data, your facts, etc., not just protesting and sloganeering, right? You come to engage, make your case that will resonate with the policymaker. And then also the employment aspect is really key. This intersectionality is really key because employment is underemployment, lack of employment is a problem across this continent and particularly in Kenya. Kenya is a middle-income country. I don't want to start throwing...
So we keep being told.
That's it. Yeah. That's exactly my feeling. But do we see that? With the number of underemployed young people, the high school dropouts, the defilements, and that's not even... I'm forgetting to talk about the increased spike of suicides, young people committing suicides, the mental health issues. And leave alone gender-based violence.
There's a lot to unpack and still to continue having conversations about in terms of where then young people must be involved.
They must be involved. Sustainable development requires inclusion of young people because it's their future.
Indeed. A good note to wrap up on this conversation with Acheng Akumu. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you.
Acheng is the Regional Director for Africa at Planned Parenthood. Thank you for being with us this morning. Still a lot in terms of inclusion, participation when it comes to young people and the current conversations about future and livelihoods in Kenya today. Thank you for joining us and we hope to talk with you again in the future.
Thank you.
Remember, as we bring this to a close today, that I&M says you can have access to Kenya's largest unsecured personal loan in the country, up to 10 million shillings over a period of 8 years. Go in today with your payslip and a letter from your employer and have a conversation about how you can borrow. And we've been asking for 5,000 shillings today. How would you spend it if you had it? Our winner for today is Wilson Mongare. And our social media teams will get in touch with you as you say you would start a small business, a Mali business, and support your younger brothers and sisters in school. Fantastic. You win 5,000 shillings today. Our teams will get in touch with you. Thanks for keeping it Kenya's biggest conversation today. We're coming around to 10 o'clock tomorrow, 6 a.m. We'll be back here and continue having conversations that affect our nation. Thanks for keeping it here. We'll talk again tomorrow. It's 10 o'clock.
Spice up your life